Yeah, most of the stuff that Brian cuts are mostly against European nations that he offends.
Yeah.
What are we on now, Brian? The Finns are gone. The Danish. I
want to be very clear. I have never said anything bad about the Finns.
You just erased their existence is all.
You refuse to acknowledge that Finland is a real place.
It's fine. I mean,
look, I don't have anything against the Finns because they're not Dutch.
Right. In most of the Dutch anti-Dutch sentiment and anti-Italian sentiment stays in. So like we keep it well-rounded. I was learning
a bit about Dutch magic on your podcast.
Wait, did you say anti-Italian? I'm already offended.
Oh, come on.
Oh yeah, Lauren's a little Italian.
No, we're allowed to because AJ's Italian.
That's right.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the worst of all possible worlds, the first and only podcast ready to tear down famed Italian-American author Frank Peretti. I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
I'm the worst of all possible
Joshes.
Oh, God.
There we go. We did it.
There's no order for this. It was chaos. I wanted to let you laugh, Josh. I wanted to let you finish your laugh.
And it's fine. Let's
Joining
do it.
us today are the Sinister Sisters, the queens of horror themselves, those ghost storytellers Felicia Lobo and Lauren Harris. Welcome.
Hi, friends. That's wild.
The crowd goes, ooh.
I like that introduction, Brian. It was very, like Candor and Ebb. It was very, and now.
I liked it.
Even the podcast guests are beautiful.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
I mean, we are musical ladies, yeah.
Yes, it's true. I'll just talk a little bit about the relationship of Lauren Harris and myself.
Yes, please.
That's great.
We went to school together, and we started a theater company called Insomnium Theater Company back in, who knows?
2015.
Okay, yeah. We did a lot of spooky plays, spooky things.
Love that.
Our last thing we ever did, which is not to say it was bad, because it was also the best thing we ever did, was Suburban Nightmare, written by the one and only A.J. Diddy.
I did write that, and then I killed your theater company, and I will never forgive myself for that.
No. We were at a point, definitely, that we were petering out, but we loved this show so much that we were like, we must continue to work on this show.
It's true.
That's very kind.
And don't worry, that show will one day be finished, I believe.
It has to. Yes. It has to be done across high schools across America.
I think high schools would really, really dig it.
Absolutely.
Brian described it as a queer fantasia on werewolf themes, I think, once.
I mean, I'm sold. Even if I didn't know it already, I'm sold.
And AJ, I've long thought of you as the Italian Tony Kushner, so, you know.
Thank you.
Oh,
I can see it in your eyes.
Finally, there's a Tony Kushner for the goys. So I have made my co-hosts and our guests watch a very good movie that is not bad.
Oh my God. Yeah, fuck you for this, Brian. Fuck you so much. Genuinely.
Josh, so this is the kind of person Josh is. He read the book yesterday and then watched the movie.
I'm not that kind of person.
It took him.
I'm the opposite of that person.
I get it. Yeah. Here's the thing, though.
That's why
it's
I
a
did
quick
the movie.
read.
That's why I was like, I'm not going to do a Frank Peretti book. We have to talk about a movie.
It is a very quick read. I read it in about an hour and a half.
Which is less time than the movie takes.
Correct. And part of why I wanted to read it again is that I actually did read some Frank Peretti books growing up. So part of it, too, was I wanted to capture the magic of that language and remember if it was every bit as scintillating as I remember it being as a kid, which it wasn't. But even so, this book was much better than the movie, which isn't to say that the book was great. It's to say that this movie was fucking horrible and I hated it.
At any point in the book, did a character say, "I ain't afraid of no ghost"?
No.
Absolutely not.
What about call off your ghost?
Also, no. Wow. No, it's actually pretty different. And we'll get into some of those differences later on. But yeah, why don't we just get started by talking about our overall sentiment toward this film in broad strokes. Then I think we can talk a little bit about Frank Peretti as an author.
So I think I should start with this because I actually saw this movie back in the day. It was featured on ABC Family's lineup, The 13 Nights of Halloween.
No.
What?
No.
Yeah. Which these days, usually they just show like, I don't know, Hocus Pocus or Halloween Town 2 or the Harry Potter movies for some reason. But back in the day,
occult,
they were
Brian.
trying to produce even some original entertainment. I thought this was a TV movie, and it sure fucking looks like a TV movie.
Yes.
Was it not? Was this released in theaters?
This was released in theaters. This was designed for
many
theatrical
theaters?
release.
Like 2 theaters?
Release. Yeah, and then something like that. It made like $80,000 or something in the box office. It was really bad.
And cost $2 million. So
This
somebody was
cost
unhappy.
$2 million? So was it all the
That's what Wikipedia
spiders?
said.
Lord have mercy.
Which
It
is
was
still
probably all for the spider handlers.
Yeah,
They
that's
got
what I
paid
was
a
going
lot
to
of
say.
money.
Yeah. All those tarantulas.
And there's quite a bit of CGI at the end, which couldn't have been all that cheap. And it's shot on film. You know, it's expensive things. Union
Yeah,
production.
Film?
Oh yeah, it's shot on. It looks really bad because they've like upped the contrast all to hell, but that is 100% film.
You also have to
Why would
pay
they-
your editors,
Yeah.
and there is a
it's
lot
a
of
union
editing
production.
in this movie.
That Gossip Girl money, though, they gotta really shell out.
But yeah, so I saw this at night on ABC Family, which is really where it belonged in 2003, 2004. This was a channel founded by Pat Robertson,
Right.
the televangelist, host of the 700 Club, and then
Wow.
it used to just be the
What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it used to
What are
be
you
just
Is that
talking
why
about?
the 700 Club always came on at like 10 p.m.?
It's a contractual thing because it used to be his channel, and he sold it to Fox. So it was Fox Family for like 2 years.
Right.
And then they
She
had to
acquired
keep
it from
showing
Fox.
700 Club, and then it went to
Wow.
ABC Family, and now it's
Freeform.
thank you.
But 700 Club is still on, isn't it? Yeah,
that's the
what I
only
thought.
thing.
yeah, it
That's
is.
the only thing that he's attached to, but they can't take it off the air. That is just
Right.
the deal somehow. Which
And
means that
do we-
sometimes this weird faith-based shit kind of makes its way in. Like
It's worth noting. I mean, they were under no contractual obligation to show this. You know,
No,
their
no,
programming
but-
outside of 700 Club. The moment that Pat Robertson handed the keys over to Fox, and then of course they later handed over to ABC, to Disney, there is no, other than showing 700 Club, there is nothing that they have to put on.
Right. I mean, and like I said, they show Hocus Pocus. They show like Disney Channel movies for the 13
Right.
Nights of Halloween. They could have just shown like Under Wraps or whatever this night. But instead, they found this like Canadian filmed movie from a low tier Frank Peretti book. And they were like, yeah, we're going to put this on the telly.
Now, before we dig into Frank Peretti
And his miracle elixir.
I'm very curious to hear, Lauren and Felicia, first of all, had you had any exposure to the world of Mr. Peretti before seeing this film?
I had not.
Definitely not.
Okay, cool. Just
This
wanted
is
to make
I
sure.
think I've steered clear of most like Christian writers, Christian music, Christian rock.
Yeah, and wisely
I've
so.
really done my best.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Except for Seventh Heaven. I did watch Seventh
Wow.
Heaven.
course.
I can't believe that actually.
But
Right.
you
Seventh
were,
Heaven was
you were
hard to
doing
escape.
great until you told AJ, yeah, sure, we'll go on your podcast.
So before we really
now
dig
she's hooked.
into the movie and what it's about and that sort of thing, I'm just curious to hear initial first reactions to the thing overall. Do you hate Brian as much as I do after he forced you to watch
As
this?
much as we do, let's be clear, as much as we do.
I actually watched it twice, so I don't know what that means. But the first time I
What?
know. I know. It's really something. I watched it the first time and I pretty much like put it on as background noise. And then I was like, there's a lot of plot happening.
There is a lot.
Surprising about.
And, I think it was at the point that like the family, like this early on in the film, like the family, when they take off like their wig and their like undercover stuff. And I was like, wait. What is happening? What is going on?
That's my favorite scene in the movie.
I
We're going to spend like a half hour just on that scene.
We sure are.
until it happened,
yeah.
I was like, that's a terrible wig. Come on. And that nose ring, like, what are they doing? But anyway, so I watched it sort of like, because I was doing something else. And then I was like, you know what? I have to go back and watch it because there was so much going on. But I didn't hate anyone. I felt it was so awful. It was entertaining.
Okay, so it came
good.
back
It came back
around
around
for
for
you,
me.
basically. Did you have a similar reaction, Felicia?
I barely got through it the first time.
Okay.
But I did.
good.
I was paying attention. I was trying.
It's not easy.
Paying attention. For me, it was funny because when you had initially said something about Christian, evangelical, whatever, in reference to this movie, I started looking for some of those things, and I was surprised at first. I was like, I'm not really like sensing that. Like I was like, I'm not really sure like what this is about.
That's how they get you.
That's how they get you. It wasn't until the big, Christian songs started coming in, and then I started reading some
Extreme
reviews, which I don't know if you guys are interested, but I have a couple of Christian reviews
I would love.
saved.
Yeah.
Nothing more. I would love nothing more.
Oh my God, is one of them
Yes,
from
much
Plugged
later.
In? Did you find the Plugged In review?
Yes, I have the review.
Hell yeah. We'll get to that. That's
this
awesome.
is just music to Josh's and my ears.
Yeah. But I will say my biggest overall thought is, yes, things made no sense. I didn't know what was going on sometimes. I don't care.
Yep.
But I did love watching Leighton Meester just act her little butt
Oh
off.
my God, yes.
She's like, I am acting.
She tried so hard in this film. And to what end? To what
And
end?
she is so talented. I truly believe she is so talented. And
Right.
she couldn't do it all alone.
And it was really funny. I was watching there's a handful of special features on this DVD that I had to fucking buy so that we could watch this movie.
Leighton Meester bought the rights to the movie and hid it from the internet.
Trying to get rid of all copies.
So at this point, dear listener, if you are not at all familiar with Hangman's Curse, you might be wondering, what? Spiders? Leighton Meester? What's going on? And so I feel like the best thing for us to do is really just to jump right into this movie and sort of talk about what happens in it beat by beat. So
Yeah, so at the very beginning, we get this title card that mentions the Veritas Project.
right.
Which is already, we're ready for a good time. I'm like, okay, James O'Keefe is going to come in here.
He's going to expose some progressive organization.
But also, I don't think the Veritas Project is ever mentioned again.
No.
In film. I don't think anyone ever says
I
the
also
Veritas
don't
Project
think
by
I read
name.
the title card.
Well, you would have learned that Veritas is Latin for truth.
It is.
Oh,
And
that's right. No, I did see that.
for context, the Veritas Project is the series of YA fiction
Yeah, the
books
series of two
that
books.
Peretti wrote. A series of two, and now I have read both of the books in that series because I read the second one when I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
I feel like you have some background that's really going to influence your taste in this.
I fucking hated
Not positively.
Yeah.
it. So we start out in a hallway, right? And there's this kid walking around, and he's got a rope, and his shirt's a little too baggy. His jeans are also a little too baggy. I think he's wearing New Balances. Where's he going? Is this actually me?
I also
Possibly.
we have these like great opening credits that are just like, what's the spookiest font we have on the computer right now?
Right.
Yes. Yes. If you make the font spooky, the movie will be spooky.
If I'm remembering correctly, ABC Family, or maybe it was Fox Family, just before ABC bought it, had a show called Real Scary Stories. Oh boy, I'm the only one who remembers this.
No, it sounded familiar.
So it was a ghost hunting show, but it was like teenagers who did the ghost hunting. Which is interesting because like this predates any of the big ghost hunting shows that everyone like knows now. Probably the first one, but it was just like teenagers, and it had text like that on the screen that would kind of wipe out. And it was just like, ooh, it's kind of spooky and gooey words. And it would be narrated by
words.
like 5 teenagers speaking as monotone as possible. So I just remember that the title sequence was always them going, real scary stories.
I mean,
Can we all try doing that at once? That's
Yeah.
all. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Real scary stories.
Good luck, Brian.
That's all on me
And,
Can
now.
I say a very random thing about fonts in movies
Yes.
that I
do.
just saw this
Please.
week? So I was watching, I think it's like 1995, Texas Chainsaw, The New Generation with Matthew McConaughey as a young actor.
All right.
Exactly. And he, in that movie, the title credits are all the same exact font as Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it is, I was like, wow, they really just like stole
great.
that. Okay.
So we've got this kid, and again, he's got a rope, and what's going on? Oh, he's going to hang himself, right? That's the thing. He ends up tying up a noose, and he's dead.
Why does this school have an opera house in their attic?
I was
say.
just like, this kid just keeps going up and up and up. I mean, I'm from a small town, so I went to a single story high school, but I was like, this is a very tall school.
Very vertical. It might actually be the school from Sideways Stories from Wayside School.
Aw, I
There we go.
love that
I was hoping that would
book.
land for somebody. Let's go.
Paul
Tried to go to
Giamatti
the
was great in
13th
that.
floor, but when he got to the 13th floor, he was trapped there and had to memorize like entire
Exactly.
sections of the dictionary. And he met someone there who had made it through the B's at that point, and it was just
And
like,
then
how
he
did
hung himself.
And then he hung himself. Yeah.
He never got to Veritas in the dictionary. He'll never know.
Exactly,
that was true.
exactly. After the kid
was
hangs himself, it is 10 years later, and somebody is etching a hangman into a locker. Ooh, what does this mean? And now we know that obviously something is going on. That was the titular hangman at the beginning, and clearly that sigil is something to do with the titular curse. And then immediately after that, it's a smash cut into a football game, and
Football!
Jimmy Bolts is moving the ball. Folks,
And it's
Jimmy Bolts.
5 years later? What
10
is the
years
time?
later.
It's
10
10
years
years
later.
after that boy has hanged himself.
Great.
And he sees some goths in the stands. And,
love
yeah.
that the goths have like a reserved section of the bleachers.
They sure
Also,
do.
what are the goths doing
Why
at
are
the
they
football
there?
game? It doesn't make any
they're
sense.
there to curse Jimmy.
They're in
Jimmy
direct
Bolts.
sunlight. They don't belong there.
They're mumbling under their breath so Harry will fall off his broom. I mean, of course that's why they're there.
Right. And it's actually kind of like framed similarly to that, right? Where it's like, it seems like what
yeah.
the goths are doing over in the stands is somehow influencing Jimmy's clarity of thought, right?
The local Spokane newsie who's like, pass me the ball. It'll be fucking great. Just throw me in the end zone. Great pizza pie. Like it's his accent was so jarring, and then he just dies, right? I had a hard time telling if people were dying in this movie or just going
I
into
actually
like a
don't think
coma.
they're dying.
In the movie, they are not dying. In the book, they do. But
Because they're trying to keep it real PG-13.
That's Frank Peretti. He goes hard. The easiest way to describe Frank Peretti and like what he is and what he does, he is the evangelical Stephen King.
No.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the kind of stature that he has in like the evangelical.
Is he a good
fiction
writer?
world.
He's all right.
He's not a bad writer.
He's no Stephen King, but he's not terrible.
Yeah, Hangman's Curse is like on the lower end of his books.
I mean, I didn't read it. I'm not saying I read it and I have
yeah.
an opinion. I'm just curious.
But I have read a couple of Frank Peretti books, and they always have like really, really bad conclusions. Like there's one I read called Monster, which is like this really good book about Sasquatches for most of it, and then it ends up being about how evolution can't be real.
Dang it. Dang it, Frank.
And this kind of goes back
So
to
close, Frank.
this kind of goes back to the point from earlier that was it Felicia? Were you saying that it was like I was trying to look for the Christian stuff?
Yes.
So that's very different in this movie from how his books are. The beginning of the book is a message from the president of the United States, being like, "I'm the president, and we need to hire somebody with Judeo-Christian values to investigate paranormal activity for some reason," and. That is the framing for the Veritas Project, is that it's actually something that is headed up by the president, but due to separation of church and state is funded by third-party conservative Christian donors.
Wow.
So
Right. He said, it has to be Judeo-Christian, so we can't actually fund that except through non-tax deductible donations, which is like your donations to religious groups are totally tax deductible.
That's
They're
one of the big
like,
points, yeah.
but the thing
And also, is he going into all this detail in the book?
Yes.
Like, why?
that's a great question. And I think the answer is just to Frank Peretti as a person and as an author is a reactionary conservative, right? His politics, his social politics are straight out of the early 1900s. And probably his best known book is
We need
actually
a gold standard.
his best known book is actually the two-parter. There's a book called This Present Darkness, and then its sequel, which is called Piercing the Darkness. This is an adult fiction book, and basically the story is that this demonic presence, which comes in the form of things like ACLU lawyers and abortionists,
this is not a
not a
joke.
joke. This is
Holy
100% serious.
bananas.
Is descending on this little small town in middle America, and these demonic forces, which are very real literal demons that are like perching on people's backs, are fucking up the tranquility of this small American town. So when he's fully on his shit, that's the kind of stuff he's writing. But when he's writing for kids, he dials it back a bit. And then when
Well, and the other thing about This Present Darkness, too, is that it's about New Age.
Yes.
It's about, like, how New Age is coming in and being led by Satan and the Jews at the ACLU to destroy America.
Jesus.
Okay, I just looked up amount of copies sold of The Present Darkness.
Yeah.
2.5 million.
Sounds right.
Is unacceptable.
That's too many copies.
Like I said, he's similar in stature to
Wow.
Stephen King. in the evangelical.
But
world.
This certainly
He's
feels like
big
a
seller.
Stephen King TV movie, is what I'll
Yeah.
say at
Oh,
times.
yeah.
It's not Langoliers, but
I don't know. Is Langoliers also about prayer in school?
No, it's about giant snakes that happen in like a netherworld with a plane. I
Wow.
don't know. I don't read Stephen
That
King.
sounds like it's about prayer in school to me. In the same way where Stephen King writes primarily about Maine, right? Everything is set in Maine. Frank Peretti does that with the Pacific Northwest. So everything takes place around like Spokane or like the Idaho Panhandle or Oregon or whatever. Like it's all, or like a little bit of Western Montana. It's all right in that area. He's doing the exact same thing that King is doing.
And he's
but for
also
where he
acting
is.
in his movies, just like Frank Peretti is.
Apparently.
One could also
Man.
say that geographically speaking, Sam Hunter is the Frank Peretti of the American theater.
Okay.
That's actually. I'm surprised Sam Hunter hasn't written a Frank Peretti-esque character into one of his
I'm sure
plays.
he knows about him.
This is some nerd shit.
So, Felicia and Lauren, I'm curious
Let's
to hear
just get
then.
everyone who's written about Washington. Stephanie Meyer.
I'm curious to hear,
Stephanie Meyer.
given this additional context about sort of like who Frank Peretti is and what his deal is, do things start to make a little bit more sense now? Is this starting to become a bit clear why this movie was the way that it was?
Yes, but I'm kind of surprised
Yes.
it's so toned down then. I would think he
Sure.
would like want to push his message a little bit more, especially like being in it and seemingly like so
Right.
on board. I'm kind of surprised.
And
Yeah,
give me
it
a
kind of-
performance I did not hate, and in fact, kind of loved.
Honestly, AJ, it would have been a great role for you.
I was like, I wish this was AJ.
Yeah, AJ would be very good in that
Yeah.
role. You'd have to learn banjo, but
I would have to learn banjo. A thing he pulled out at one point, did not play, put away, and then ate Twinkies in a scene that was baffling. He was just like, I need some business to do while I'm on camera. What if I did all the business at once?
Absolutely.
Well, and Josh, does that character in the book play the banjo?
I do not remember, but I don't think so. Anyway, let's go back.
Okay, so that was definitely just because Frank Peretti plays the banjo.
We will get to
Right,
Frank
he's gonna
Peretti's
play it.
character a little bit later.
Yeah,
Let's
so
get
we're
back
at
to
the
the football
football
game.
game.
Yeah.
Football.
Football.
Goths.
Jimmy Bolts with the ball. All of a sudden, the opposing team's QB, all of a sudden, there's like a visual effect where his face gets like distorted and there's like a woof kind of thing
Yeah.
going on, right?
Jimmy starts tripping balls.
Right.
The
And
best
he's-
way to describe it is a woov effect, because I don't know what else. Like high contrast, like it kind of looks like your
Higher contrast.
It looks
than
like it
normal.
was done on like a 2004 like Windows computer.
It probably
like
was.
shooting out at you. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean,
Like the computer,
It was
like
just
the internet was
in the
vomiting in your
default
face. yes.
movie maker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
every time these attacks happen in the book, it's really fucking cool.
I'm suspicious that is not true.
No. Listen,
Here,
I'll just describe it. He basically sees a guy in the end zone with his head like cocked off to the side with vacant eyes, and then he fucking sicks a hawk on him. He gets this hawk flying into his face, and he has to run away from the hawk because that's what's going on when he's tripping balls. Whereas in the movie, all you see is a black and
Dude,
white
I'm
guy
tripping
going
hawk balls.
and it's fucking pathetic. Anyway, the Goths work here is done, right? Because he can't stop saying the name Abel Fry. And Abel Fry is going to be important. Right after this now, we are in a warehouse, and it's just such a sudden
There's a drug
transition.
deal.
This might be the greatest scene put to film.
I want
think.
to. I would-
This is so good.
I would love to. I don't want to describe this one. I would like to hear all of you kind of describe this scene collectively from memory because it sounds. I just want to hear.
Let's leave this up to Felicia
no.
and
Oh,
Lauren,
God,
and
this is
we'll
gonna
help
be
them.
so horrible.
We'll pull you out of the water when you start drowning, because you will.
I will drown right now. There's something about a bunch of different gothy kind of looking characters, but they're not our original goths. These
Right.
are
Yeah,
new
they're
goths.
different goths.
New goths.
That's my favorite
that-
Shin song is New Goths.
New goths. So they're kind of wandering about, and there's some sort of altercation that I didn't quite understand.
It's like a
And then
drug handoff.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it's a drug thing. Thank
Yeah.
you, Lauren. Do you want to take over?
I was really.
So-
The drug dealer comes out with like an upside down cross on his forehead.
No, that's the weird
Like
part.
Manson.
It's just a regular cross. It's not even
yeah, they
upside
don't wanna look
down.
like
It's just like this
Catholics.
evangelical drug dealer, and you're like, okay,
I thought it was just Ash Wednesday.
yeah, there's my dirty papist. Welcome, Lauren.
But then eventually they all reveal that they are what I thought at first were undercover cops. And then you see that, which I thought for a
that's-
while.
They were undercover cops.
Because then the dealers are going to the
Yeah.
kids and being like, "Are you an undercover
I mean
cop?"
the family. I didn't realize the
Yeah.
family was
Yeah.
like a hired entity.
And they're like
Right,
pointing
yes.
guns at the children. This nuclear family hired by the United States government to investigate ghosts, I guess also do drug busts
in their
on the
free time,
side,
yeah.
where they point loaded guns at teenage children.
Yeah.
It was a slow time for them.
It's Look, they got to pay rent on their
Off-season.
mobile home.
Their mobile home.
That
oh my
that
God.
nose ring too is pretty expensive.
It's like they went to the props department and said, "Give me the smallest gun you have." No, smaller, like you would give a child.
Wait, I have to give a reference that's going to make no sense, but here I am. I've been watching a lot
we
of
go.
Wife Swap recently because they put it on Hulu.
Sure.
And
Go
there are a
on.
surprising amount of families that like live on the road in some way, like either in a camper, that they move around the country, they homeschool their kids. One guy was in the rodeo, I don't know. But there was always this conflict of like these kids like not getting to have friends and a normal life and like
Right.
whatever. And I was like, wow, all these wife swap themes are really coming up in this movie. These poor children, they have to work.
Hangman's Curse is the wife swap of Frank Peretti movies.
So a
Yeah.
Disney executive was watching this movie with 5 other people in a Canadian movie theater and was like, this is really, wife swap is really big right now. And this is hitting a lot of those buttons.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Let's put it on our channel.
Did anyone else make the Spy Kids?
Oh, sure.
Reference
Yeah. It is.
Oh yeah.
I felt when they came out and they're
Yeah.
all black, like
This was also very much
Jumpsuits, yeah.
that time, and
Yeah.
to the point of like teenagers
Yeah.
going out and doing things and being cool. That kind of was a big thing in the early aughts, like from I would say like the tweens up to teens. You got Spy Kids, you got this, you've got what was that fucking movie with Frankie Muniz?
Agent Cody Banks.
Agent Cody Banks. For some reason, the collective fantasy of adolescents and pre-adolescents at the time was to be really cool undercover spies.
Oh my God, like that Lindsay Lohan movie.
Get a Clue.
Get a
gonna
clue.
come. Yes.
Disney Channel
You're
original
right,
movie.
that was
Get a
like
Clue.
a whole subgenre of films.
Yeah.
The big difference, though, between stuff like that and this movie, though, is that in most of these sort of adolescent spy fantasies, they're kind of like out there on their own, doing their own thing all the time. Whereas in this movie, as we then come to learn after this weird drug bust happens, the kids are always working very closely with their parents to accomplish their outcomes.
It's not even a full drug bust. There's like lore involved in it because they're
they're
like, we gotta find Gomez. What's Gomez doing?
Gomez
and of course,
crime ring, yeah.
And of course, Gomez, this horrible Gomez, this
This
man,
horrible Hispanic, is that what we're trying to say in this Christian movie?
Yes.
this horrible Latino man is coming into our white communities and recruiting suburban goths to deal his cocaine.
Oh
Well,
my
actually,
God.
it's, I thought it was meth.
and we'll never see him again. The bus doesn't even work.
Well, because they said amphetamines, didn't they, at one point?
Yeah.
Like, she's like, freshly
Yeah.
cooked
Yeah.
this morning, hot from the oven, this meth, just like Grandma used to make. Like,
It's just like any general drugs they could think of when they were writing.
I do love my Nestle Toll House amphetamines.
this literal 15-year-old kid saying, "I'm not a cop." We know you're not a cop. You are 15 years old.
but then the other kid is
Right,
a cop.
exactly.
yeah.
Well, he was trained by the FBI, but it was a correspondence course.
So this played on ABC Family in 2004. And I think just take your mind back to those halcyon days of 2004.
I mean, I was watching ABC Family. I don't know how I missed this.
Evangelicalism was in the air,
Yeah.
It was just like, it doesn't really surprise me that a movie like this ends up in this block where they're trying to fill 13 nights with cheap movies.
George W. Bush was wrapping up his first term. The war on terror was the item on everybody's mind. We'd
Yeah.
gone into Iraq, the previous year, right? That started, I think, in 2003. So
Just
that's kind
3
of
years
Paris
the...
before
Hilton was
Avril Lavigne
partying.
just appeared from the air with no
Right.
birth certificate or
Hard to
really true
yeah.
origin. Yeah.
Right.
and smelling faintly.
So that's interesting
of a
too, though.
smoldering tower in New
Is that
York.
in this context, they are working for the federal government. They're working for the president of the United States. And the fact that this is a sort of, again, Judeo-Christian thing is crucial to their entire project, because what they do, I guess, is they go around as a family and they all go in undercover as different characters in different situations to uncover paranormal activity? Question mark.
Which is so preposterous to me, because why did the man have to pose as a janitor? There was no need.
Because he had that really cool Tennessee Vols hat. You got it. How else are you going to get away with wearing a Tennessee baseball cap?
So what we learn when Jimmy trips balls and dies on the football field?
Dies. We don't. I guess we don't ever see him again.
He doesn't die. He goes to the hospital.
Right.
You know, just like on Voltron, right? When they translated it, no one dies. They just go to the hospital.
Or in Yu-Gi-Oh, they don't go to the Shadow Realm. They die.
Yeah.
So is this family supposed to be stopping these paranormal things or debunking them?
That is an excellent question.
They are finding the truth because, as you know, veritas is the Latin word for truth.
They're trying to find the truth behind the facts.
That's what makes this story interesting, because this story ends up being sort of a Hound of the Baskervilles thing, where like everything has an explanation.
Yeah.
Right, which I hate.
It was real
I
bad.
don't need to know.
And that's unusual for Frank Peretti. As an author, the ghosts, the monsters, the evolution monster created by an evil scientist who's trying to prove evolution, which can't happen, they're all real.
Yep.
They're all actual demons, actual evil spirits. But this one, of course, that is not the case.
Mm-hmm.
But Brian, spiders are real, and they hate you.
We move forward in school a little bit. The goths get mugged for lunch money, but we learned that they're kind of like using Abel Fry, the ghost of Abel Fry, to get back at the jocks.
They like worship him.
Right.
They're like, yeah.
Yeah, well, he gets tangible results for them, but also I want to talk about the scene where we're introduced to like the jocks walking down the hallway together, because it is silent in the hallway except for their footsteps and their talking, and it is so unnerving and uncanny. To me, it's the scariest scene in the whole
only
film.
unnerving scene in the movie.
Hey, a couple of the jumps got me, but we know how I am about jumps.
I'm sorry.
But no, the sound mixing in this movie makes absolutely no sense, because it blares like this really terrible, like just kind of off-brand like alt rock.
Yeah, this incidental music. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and then they pull it back so that it's almost imperceptible. But then that just highlights how silent the hallway is as they're walking down it.
Right.
And then when the goths round the corner, it blares again, but then has to go back down when they start talking, and then it's silent again. And it's really, I feel like the sound editor.
$2 million, people. $2 million.
But also, that's part of it too. Is like, right? They didn't have enough money to get enough extras to really make it feel like a real school.
Right.
No, I believe
also,
that.
I want to just point this out. The family of the Veritas Project, they have a dog.
Oh, they sure
and
do.
the name of the dog performer that plays the dog is William Shakespeare.
I saw that.
Sweet.
I love William Shakespeare.
For some reason, I thought you were going to say Air Bud.
It was Airbud. It was the same dog
I'm-
played Airbud. I wish.
Air Bud is
The
actually
star
a
dog.
devout Pentecostal.
There's nothing in the rules that says Airbud can't be a Pentecostal Christian. Do you know what I mean?
But they couldn't afford Airbud. Like,
Right.
there's no way.
That's true. That's true.
They could maybe afford MVP, most valuable primate.
Yes.
But
Maybe.
this is before he made it big.
Another
So-
way that the kids are embedding themselves into the school apparently is that the girl Alicia, aka Leighton Meester, is getting into a debate with the teacher about the essence of
Prayer in
the
school.
absolutes of right and wrong, and if prayer in schools is morally justifiable.
Prayer in
What?
school. This is my favorite thing.
I kind of forgot that. That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
That's one of the
so
few movies,
Felicia,
one of the few moments where the
Lauren-
movie does really show its hand here too.
Yeah.
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 Did you ever grow up hearing about prayer in school as like an issue?
Oh, yeah, of
right.
course.
Like everything that's bad is happening, Columbine or whatever, is because they took prayer out of school. And then here we are in 2004,
Uh-huh.
and this brave young girl from the government has decided to argue with her liberal cuck teacher about prayer in school. And then he says something about like diversity, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, so does that mean we have to be accepting of terrorists?"
Oh.
Blowing
Wow.
themselves up.
Oh,
She got his
Ow.
ass.
So did both of you go to public schools, or what was your background?
Public
Cool.
school.
Public school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like specifically with the prayer in schools thing, was that something that you ever experienced? Like, were there kids at your school who did the whole see you at the pole, like prayer in school advocacy stuff, or was it just kind of part of the background noise for you?
Oh, no.
See You at the Pole definitely existed at my
wow.
school, and I did not know what it was until this
Yeah.
moment.
Oh, that's amazing. A learning
boy.
moment.
I was a
There would just be
demonic
one day
child,
a
I
year
guess.
you'd be like, what the fuck are all these people doing around the flagpole right now?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even like say the pledge or say under God. So like, I definitely was.
Nice.
But my brother, I always feel like I had to preface this with he did very well in college, but he did very poorly in high school, and so he had to be moved to the private Christian school
Oh, okay.
I
that
see.
he had to do for his 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year, and he did have to do like the mass and all that kind of stuff. That was like pretty wild. So
this
I was
was-
like, oh wow.
He needed the
I
Lord's
was going to
help.
say, they were probably praying for him,
Apparently.
right?
Apparently, he
I
went
just-
in as a strong atheist, and they were like,
That's what it was.
"Uh-oh."
That was the problem. They took prayer out of
Right.
school, and your brother started struggling.
Yes, that was it.
I mean,
That's exactly what it was.
but like this was such a. I mean, it was everything. You'd hear it every time you went to church, and it was just like the prayer. You guys, it has to be in the school. The prayer has to be there. Which it like any student can fucking pray at any time they want to.
Yeah.
It's not out of. They're fine.
Yeah, it's like they want organized prayer, which
Right.
is very
They
different
want the
than the
teachers
right
to
pray.
lead kids in prayer. That's all they want. It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
a,
that's
in,
wild.
in a prayer to the one true Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It's fucked.
It was amazing to me that Alicia was so upset about there not being prayer in school that she said the phrase, "Now I'm bugging."
She has some interesting,
calls him teach.
like catchphrases throughout this that I'm like, Lead Meester, you would never say that. You should have spoke up as an actor.
Right.
She was just so excited to get to the spiders. I don't want to be fired before I get covered in spiders.
The end of class, all the popular girls are like, wow, we love prayer in school too. You seem very cool because you stood up for the Lord. Do you want to eat lunch with us? She's like, sure, maybe. And then some nerd kid comes up and he's like, I like that you were insubordinate to the teacher.
Yeah, you
Wow.
finally
And then
stood up
that's
to him.
over. And then the one black student at this school comes on to her and is just
Who's
like,
on the
hey,
football
I
team,
want to
by
put
the
my
way."
penis inside of you. I, the black football player, I am oversexed and I do not believe in God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he uses what I think is the best pickup line I've ever heard in my life is,
Yeah, let's hear
"Do you
it.
believe in the hereafter?"
Yeah, what? I forgot about that.
To which she responds, "Yeah." And he's like, "You want to be here after?" And like
No,
puts
he's-
his hand on the door behind her.
And then she's like, no, I took a purity pledge.
She sure did. The nuclear family itself are all disguised as different members of the school's community.
Right,
So the
right.
two kids are now attending class.
Right.
The brother, who's usually super cool, is now one of the nerds. And then,
He's wearing glasses and they've put a lot of blush on his
Right.
cheeks.
And Alicia has now like put herself into like the popular clique. The dad, not Nathan Fillion, is the janitor, and
Right.
the mom is the school nurse.
Is that what it
How
was?
did they get all these jobs? I don't
Yeah.
know.
What happened to the other nurse?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did the school not
She
have
died.
The
one?
hangman's curse.
Oh.
So just when you were talking about the idea of her being rebellious and that attracting other students to her and stuff,
Yeah.
it's something about this started making me think about just like the manipulation of the youth through like these kind of Christian types of content, music,
Yeah.
books, whatever. And it's like, oh, we're going to give them what they're looking for in terms of these, like, especially when I'm thinking about Frank Peretti's books about like spooky stuff and like horror elements, and like we're gonna give those things to them, but we're gonna like disguise all the messages that we
Right,
want to
yeah.
give them.
Absolutely.
And like like they want to be a rebellious teenager. Oh, like our lead is a rebellious teenager. She's just rebelling
Yeah.
for the things that we want her to.
You know,
And I'm like,
Jesus was the first rebel.
Because of that as well, you get a sort of like wish fulfillment thing going on too, right? Where you are fulfilling that adolescent power fantasy, but retracking it so that it then feeds right back into sort of a more conservative reactionary
I mean,
framing.
this
It's
is
And
really
that's why I had
something.
to watch it twice. Like I got through the whole scene and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, she was arguing which way? Like this can't be
Yeah,
right.
like as we're
To
talking
be a
through it
cool
all, I'm
kid.
like, whoa.
That's the problem, Lauren. Now it's gotten in your brain. You've now.
No, now I believe it.
Did this scene even register with you at all besides her really like cringe slang?
Well, no, I was mostly focused on her trying to like get in with the students.
Yeah.
that's kind of what my focus was on, and now my focus is somewhere very different.
Right.
Yeah. Like I saw this scene and I was like, oh my God. I was like furiously. I just wrote it in all caps. I was like, prayer in school, diversity and terrorism. It's like, this is my shit.
It really is.
my God.
It really is. We've been listening to a lot of Adventures in Odyssey, which is also a show that sort of very heavy-handedly like shows you kind of exactly what it's doing, is trying to teach you these morals. And what I actually appreciated about this movie was that it was a lot more subtle about it, and it wasn't just like every scene was about learning how to pray. Like it's not like God's Not Dead, which is just a lecture.
Well, there was this movement in kind of Christian independent cinema at this point in time where this was like until Facing the Giants came out, and I won't get into that, but like movies like Extreme Days were coming out where it was like, it's full of Christian music, but they talk about...
That was the Christian surfing movie, wasn't it? Extreme Days?
What the fuck are you talking
not just
about?
Surfing. They went snowboarding.
Sorry, okay, yeah.
Johnny Tsunami became an evangelical Christian.
Johnny Tsunami didn't, but Rufio did.
No, not Rufio.
Yeah.
Not Dante Bosco, no!
Dante Bosco is in the movie.
Zuko, no!
But like the movie is just like a normal, guys hanging out and chilling and then being sexually pure.
That's how they get you.
But there's one like brief scene where they talk about Jesus, sort of, and then move on. And so that was kind of the thing. It was like we just want to get people in, so then we can just sort of massage the gospel.
Well, that's also a strategy that calls back to a Christian idea, which is the gospel of the mustard seed, right? Which comes from a Christian, like a parable that Jesus told, where he was like, somebody's faith, somebody's belief is kind of like a mustard seed, like it's tiny, you can't even see it.
A fun thing that we do at Christian school is that one day in class, our teacher will hand out a bunch of mustard seeds to each of us to show us just how small they are.
They're so small, dude. They're tiny.
Yeah, they're
just
really
little
small.
specks. But they grow into these big tall trees, and that's what Jesus said that faith is like.
That's where all the mustard comes from.
The idea then being you don't need to necessarily drill the whole thing into somebody. You just plant little seeds, and then those seeds will naturally flourish over time. In terms of the movie, I want to run through sort of what happens next, because what happens next is honestly kind of boring.
Some bullying happens.
Bullying.
I would like to point out that the math nerds are walking down the hallway and they're doing math on their hands because I guess they ran out of money for paper.
That's how nerdy
they get
are.
mugged. They get mugged again, and they give over even more of their money.
Yeah, one kid is like out of money.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to be able to.
He's like, I can't afford this anymore.
We
Got
learned
any
that.
dead presidents? I don't.
We learned that Abel Fry stabbed a girl, apparently, according to what people believe, at least, and that's why he hanged himself.
Oh, I missed that.
It was easy to miss. That was when that girl had that drawing of Abel Fry.
Right.
That was the worst fucking drawing I've ever seen in my life.
Dad,
Also, Abel
Did we
Fry
skip- is
sounds
that-
like the Crucible to me. Like, it sounds like a very
It
old
does.
name.
Dad is at a locker and he finds some sort of a little tube in the locker, and that tube is really important for some reason.
It's a straw.
Never saw it. Never
Yep.
saw it.
Right? Yep. Right. There's a fight in the cafeteria. Then something happens finally in this fucking movie. Leighton Meester goes into the fenced off old wing of the school with some friends.
Forbidden Wing.
And it's spooky.
Which is just normal looking.
It's dark.
It's dark.
They put some shit like in the corner to make it look a little dirty, but
No.
It's
the
just
Forbidden Wing is
normal.
where they keep all of their ladders. Every single ladder in this school is stored in the Forbidden Wing. That's a good point. There's one. They walk into the Forbidden Wing and there's just like a diagonally leading ladder against the wall, and it's just like, no, that's not how you store a ladder.
Well, that's what the liberals did. They took prayer out of school, and they also made schools put all of their ladders into one corner of the building. That's part of their agenda. And if John Kerry had been elected, you wouldn't see a ladder again for the rest of your life.
Well, you have to climb the ladders to get to the highest point of Wayside School because eventually the budget ran out of money for building stairs.
That's right. So Felicia and Lauren, as connoisseurs of all things spooky, on a scale of 1 to 10, how effective
they
is
do?
this scene in spooking you?
I was not spooked, but I do like watching Leighton Meester walk around and be like, oh.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed the idea
She does
of
a good
it,
job. She's good.
But no, I did not find it very, very spooky.
Okay.
I actually feel like in the lens of like Hocus Pocus, like if I think about it in like a more family friendly.
If that's the scariest movie you've seen so far in your life.
It was like kind of effective.
Okay.
But not, I would not say horror movie
Sure.
effective, no.
You know what I wanted? What I wanted going into this movie that I'm
What?
just now realizing. Lord, what are those things called? Those like Christian haunted houses?
Oh,
Hell houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted like some hell house shit. Like I wanted
Sure.
something crazy to happen.
Yeah.
I was
You
also
gotta
waiting
go
for
to
that,
his
yeah.
books for that.
But instead, this scene just concludes with a jump scare of a mask.
Yeah, and I would like to take a moment to talk
She
about the jump
sees
scares in this
a
movie.
spirit Halloween costume,
Yeah.
and then she hits a
got
scaffold
skeletons.
with the back of her head.
Knocks herself out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, AJ.
No, there's something weird about the jump scares in this movie. Now, I usually can't watch jump scares because I have intense panic attacks when I do, and it's why I can't really watch a lot of horror, unfortunately. But I love horror stories
Yeah,
because
no Mike Flanagan for you. Sorry.
no, unfortunately. But there is a I love horror movie stories. So what I do is my partner Ellie watches horror movies and then just tells me the plot of those horror movies because I find them so fascinating. And
That's so sweet.
yeah, no, it's
That is so sweet.
That's how I watched Hereditary. Was Ellie just kind of narrated it to me. But in this movie, I again not a connoisseur of jump scares, but I know when one is effective because I get a panic attack, and none of these affected me because I think that the editing was just a little off. Like the big musical bombast that comes with it was like 2 or 3 seconds too late on every single jump scare, and I don't know as connoisseurs of horror yourself, Sinister Sisters, please tell. Am I close on that? Is that a true or is that a false?
That feels right to me now hearing it.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking about the mechanics of how they built those scares. In general, I was just like, they're attempting spooky atmosphere.
What I get from this movie and from other Christian horror things that I've seen, it's like they, even just beyond horror, even like other genres, they're trying to convey what that genre is. Like they have the idea of it being scary, but they don't actually have any of the skills of what
And probably
makes
because they
something
haven't
scary.
watched them because they would be
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. They just think if they make
Well, and
things
even
hard to see.
Even Peretti is somewhat controversial. There are a lot of people like my parents, who would not read this kind of thing at all. Like this is just not their vibe, and like seems kind of fucked up to read if you're really not wanting to focus on demons and stuff. But if you're Pentecostal, you're like, yeah, hell yeah.
Well, it's kind of like
Hell houses.
it's kind of like when somebody who isn't funny tries to tell jokes. You know,
Right.
it's like it's like going through the motions,
Like me.
but none of the fuck you, Brian. It's like going through the motions and the mechanics, but none of the things that make the thing what it should be are there.
Absolutely.
So from here then, after this sort of false scare or whatever, again, more just boring stuff that doesn't really make sense or matter. The mom talks to the principal and she says that they can't close the school because they want proof that these football players aren't up to something. What?
Yes.
Yeah,
I was
just close the school.
What are you
they were
talking
like-
about?
So this was also when I was very unclear whether people were dead or in comas.
Yes.
And I'm like, but either way, whether they are dead or in comas, I don't think they're kidding.
No, they're not. And one thing that I realized
And also, why are they blaming the football players when they're the ones being involved?
in the book, it only makes slightly more sense, but still not a ton. There are like still diehard fans of the football team, like some of the parents who still want to see them be able to continue playing, which I don't know. I mean, Friday Night Lights, it's a little bit believable as opposed to something like this but something that I also realized is that probably the reason that they don't ever show anybody in the hospital is because they couldn't afford to shoot at a hospital. And so
Yeah.
they had to write it out of the
That's
script.
possible. They also say the reasoning for the parents is they don't want their kids to get behind
Yeah, so they can graduate
their
on time.
schoolwork.
Right.
And I said, wait for the pandemic, baby.
Right.
Yeah. What happens here is exactly what happened with these people during COVID. They just melted down because they can't understand a world where things are slightly different sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is somewhat believable, honestly.
This principal interaction scene also brings up one of my favorite parts of the movie that I took copious amounts of notes on, and that is Abel Fry's transcript. Holy shit. If you pause and go through this transcript, it is insane.
Say.
Okay,
This is an extremely AJ Diddy moment.
So-
Like this is a trademarked
here is the class list.
AJ Diddy looking at the props.
Looking at the props. Here's the class list for Abel Fry. Intro to Chemistry,
Okay.
which he got a 2.5 in. English Composition,
what?
which he got a 3.4 in.
So we got a 4,
Felicia,
right?
these,
This
these
is
are very
GPA?
like normal grading system. You know, when you got a 3.4 in a class. Music Appreciation, which he only
Percent.
got a 3 in. And I'm like, did you not appreciate the music enough? Anyway, Art History got a 2.0 and Physical Training, his lowest score, a 1.5.
See,
Physical
that seems like an
training? Is that
insult.
the way they
That's
say it in
intentional.
Canada?
Yeah. But they, but so we've,
Is it out of 4.0?
Must be a 4-point scale,
no,
right?
I would
it's a
assume.
5-point
No?
scale.
What?
Because then next to it, it's like, here's the number of credits, and then they add those together to like get 12 for some reason. So it's just entirely
I would
a numerical
imagine this
system.
is because the prop designer, the production designer are Canadian, so they probably used some sort of weird
Well, see,
That's
Canadian
right.
voodoo
Blame
systems.
everything on the Canadianness of it.
We should. We should blame
we
so
can't
much
lose
more on
Canada,
Canada
Brian.
than we do.
Can't lose Canada.
We have to lose Canada. God damn it.
David Foster Wallace is right. We're going to war. But here's the thing. That's what I thought, that this whole thing was just like a crazy Canadian misunderstanding. But if you go into the specifics of Abel Fry's home address,
Oh no.
we find out we're in Spokane, Washington, and the address that they give in the movie is real.
Spokane.
And Rogers High School is also real.
No.
Which is where it says on the transcript that he's from, is right down the street from Rogers High School. Like literally,
no, we're
it's a
gonna have to
3-minute
bleep
walk.
that.
A 3-minute. What? Get Google off Google
this is gonna
Maps.
be-
Sorry, listen.
This is going to be a Squid Game moment where everyone's going to start going to 9 whatever this street is.
It's a wonderful house. There's a bright blue table outside of it that's like, I guess, for eating, but it doesn't really look like anyone lives there anymore. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
AJ drove by. He was taking some pictures of this.
I bought the house. There's a phone number that they put on it that I looked at. I'm like, that looks like a real phone number. So
Oh, it really is a Squid Game
I
moment.
called
Okay.
it. I called the phone
No,
number.
you didn't.
You did.
I absolutely did. I dialed the phone number,
son
and
of a
it has been unfortunately disconnected. I wish I could tell you that somebody answered, and it was somebody named Fry, but it was not. It
A
was
bunch of
disconnected.
Christian
but-
teenagers really wore that number out.
Damn.
They probably had to
I'll
cancel
tell you, it was the right area code, and there are a lot of numbers that have the same preceding.
Oh my God,
first
maybe it was
6
like
digits,
Frank
yeah.
Peretti's numbers.
It's personal number.
And that was we only get to see the transcript for that brief moment of time, and that was just for the fall semester. The spring semester was unfortunately covered up, but that was pretty much all the
Wow.
info I could
I
get
feel
on
like
Abel
if we'd
Fry.
only been able to see the spring
Wasn't he a
semester,
nerd?
we really would have been
Yeah.
able to get to the bottom of this. Fuck.
You can be okay. Just to speak out, you can be a nerd and have bad grades. Like some people are just fucking losers.
You can be a dumb nerd.
Oh. Yeah, that's the worst kind of nerd.
That really
It
is the worst
is.
kind nerd.
And then they end up becoming podcasters when they're
I was going to
30.
say, as somebody who had terrible grades in high school, I
Thought you
feel
were gonna
very
say.
fucking called out right now, and I do not appreciate it.
I also got a.
I mean, I was going to make the bad
And
joke
I
of like,
had-
and then you kill yourself. But not appropriate.
I had, again, my high school was only one story. I couldn't climb any higher.
yes.
So at this point, bro and sis,
I call them daughter cop and
daughter
son
cop and son cop, Leighton Meester and the other guy. They're
Alicia and Elijah. is
Alicia
his
and
name.
Elijah. They are now suited up in full-on tactical gear so that they can go to the school at night for some reason. They want to see what's going on in more detail. They want to find out what exactly is happening with this ghost. Mom and dad are doing some
have
bullshit
notes
with dollar bills, and the kids get back into the school. And at this point,
presidents.
At this point, there's another ineffective jump scare where Crystal has put one of her creepy drawings into the football trophy case, Crystal being one of the goths. And they find the creepy room again from before with the weird mask or whatever.
Yeah, this was a part that was weird to me because she, in the scene with the fake jump scare, she hits the scaffold and then the scene
Right.
ends. But then she's like, this pipe must have fallen on my head. But we didn't see a pipe fall on her head, right?
Well, she claimed that she was
that
hit,
didn't-
that she was struck from behind, that somebody hit her.
Well, I think what he
but
said.
she actually just
but
hit herself.
we didn't see that happen. We didn't see a thing fall on her,
no,
right?
it was she thought that she got hit, and then her brother says, "No, you actually must have just fallen back and hit this pipe," which is also a weird moment because it's like that doesn't need to be in the script, like that. There's no reason for that to be in there at all.
I think there's a lot of filler in here.
There really
It's
is.
their first like Scooby-Doo moment where like and this is what happened. I'm Sherlock Holmes.
it's like
anyway,
over
they're
explanation.
hearing this creepy incantation of some sort, and it's genuinely difficult to understand what's going on in this scene. They are running
It's very
around
hard
a
to
lot.
see, first
One
of
of the
all.
goths shows up and is like,
so
"You
good.
shouldn't
Yeah.
be here," and then that's the end of that scene.
At one point, they're talking about how she might have a crush on Blake, who is again the
Right.
aforementioned only black student at this
Right.
high school. And at one point, she says, "I'm a normal red-blooded teenage girl," and that struck me as very creepy because I knew the screenwriter was probably like a middle-aged
Yeah,
man, and I'm like,
yeah.
I don't.
I thought it was her brother that said, "It's nice to know you are a red-blooded
That's
American
right. That's right.
teenager."
It was
Which is
Elijah.
even creepier.
That's
Yeah, it's
no,
even
no, that's
worse.
normal
I hate
now.
that.
This is how all brothers talk to their sisters. As a brother of a sister, as a sister brother.
Yeah. Maybe
as
the
a girl
only
dad.
thing I remembered about this movie.
So then
It's also-
we're back at school again the next day.
I do have to mention, as they're leaving the school, there is that goth just perched on the fence. That's all.
Oh yeah,
I
the
just needed to
gargoyle
mention
Like
man.
a gargoyle.
That was me.
It was just like,
Felicia, get out of the
just like,
movie.
hi, my name is Felicia Lobo.
In 17 years, I'll be on a podcast talking about this movie. Bye.
At this point now, one of the other football players has seen a hangman in his locker. He's going after Ian, one of the goths, being like, "How dare you? Fuck you." And I gotta say, I love the way that the goths are portrayed in this movie. We haven't really had a chance to talk about the goths, and I want to talk about them because I love
let's talk about the goths.
costuming. I love their excessive amounts of eyeliner. I like the weird Limp Bizkit type music that plays way too loudly every single time they show up on screen.
Turgid Biscuit, I believe, is the name of the band.
I mean, that's how I'm trying to enter every room. is with Limp
Absolutely.
Bizkit
And
and a long cloak.
every fucking time they come in, the movie comes alive a little bit. You know what I mean?
It really does. Well, because they're the protagonists of this film.
Right.
And that's something that I feel is like a huge missed opportunity.
A better movie, and honestly, a better Frank Peretti story would have just been about a goth kid who's getting caught up in all this
I would
shit.
have loved
But
that.
he's writing for the teens, and he has to make it real warm.
Warm-blooded teens.
So curious to hear everybody's thoughts as well on these goths and sort of their presence in this film, how they're portrayed. What jumped out at you about these delightful, sad children?
I mean, I love a redheaded goth. That's my favorite kind of goth. Because the strong contrast between the hair, the pale skin,
Right.
the dark. I mean, it's gorgeous, just gorgeous look.
The constant crying, her eye makeup
Constant
off.
crying, and I did like that they were the only ones that kind of had believable relationships with each other. Like they were kind of like a
Yeah.
pack, little friends, and like everyone else in the movie, I was like, I don't even know like if you know each other. But for them, I
you
was like,
met?
oh, I feel like they're sticking together. They're doing their thing, and they believe in this legend. And I mean, I'm assuming at some point we're talking about like the idea of a legend building over time. But that's one thing that, once again, maybe a missed opportunity. Like if this movie had just been about a bunch of goths,
Right.
that had like hyped up this legend to themselves, and like we're trying to like make the world a better place for them in that school. Like
Right.
that's a great movie.
Yeah, and then they get
Right.
involved
And
in
they
like
could have
demonic
cut like at
powers.
least 25 minutes out of that film and reduced their budget significantly.
Well, we have to have a scene where Alicia walks with Blake along a river.
Yeah, that's really important.
Renounces his entire belief
That's
system.
actually super fucking important.
It's really important that they kiss, and then she says, "Don't ever do that again." But in an
Don't ever do that again.
but implied that like do it again, which I think is a terrible
Yes.
fucking message to send to
Well,
kids.
I
you
got
know?
the
Yes.
sense that the only reason she said it in that way was that her dad was watching.
Maybe, but her
From
dad
the
seems
RV.
like super cool with
He's
it.
like the cool dad,
he's-
yeah.
Well, I mean, I mean, like he's watching, and he like maybe like stayed watching a little bit longer than he probably should have.
Yeah.
I don't buy that this family's related. That's the whole thing.
Right,
This
right,
feels
right.
like
No, I don't either.
This feels like
But
witness
the
protection.
other weird thing with that guy, when she goes on a date with him, I wish I thought I had written it down, but I don't see it in my notes. He says something like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I of all people should know that no prejudice is okay."
Yeah.
That was Blake.
Like,
Blake said that.
so cringy.
The godless black man, I understand prejudice, and I was in fact worse than that prejudice by being prejudiced against
Right.
you for being a
I
Christian.
went back. I had to go back and rewatch that like 2 or 3 times just to make sure that Like, I was like, did that happen or did I just have a small
like,
stroke?
I felt
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah,
it was like, what?
they really kind of throw that under where you're like, what did he just say? It's such a poorly written line that they've almost rescued themselves, but I was on it.
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
damn it. I was like,
I have a little bit of
I was
good
like-
news. So that actor is Edwin Hodge, which is a good name.
a great
But it looks like he's actually done pretty well for himself. He has 76 acting credits.
Okay.
Holy shit.
oh, damn.
And he had a
Yes.
named role in a lot of things.
Okay.
In the Sleepy the
Honestly-
Sleepy Hollow series.
And so
good
did the
for Edwin
brother.
Hodge.
This
The
is
brother-
like a solid
The brother
cast.
ended
Where's
up
the brother
having
at?
a major recurring role on HBO's Big Love. He was in like 76
really?
episodes
Yeah.
of Big Love.
So I need me a Frank Peretti movie to launch. my
Exactly.
Oh
career.
my God, he's in Big Little Lies. Okay, this guy's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing great. But you know who's not doing great? The goths who are currently
No.
being beaten up
sorry,
by
go.
the jocks. But
It's unfortunate.
the janitor, not Nathan Fillion man, comes to their rescue. Only to
See,
be.
I thought he looked a lot like Ray Liotta, AJ, and I thought that's where you're going to go.
No,
with
he
this.
doesn't not look like Ray Liotta, but it's hard because I really only know Ray Liotta from his voice work. So,
Yes.
no,
In Adventures in Odyssey.
the coach, Josh hates that joke. He hates it so
It's
much.
not funny.
So the coach comes around the corner as the janitor is trying to chastise
God,
these
this-
bullies for
Oh,
being
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
assholes.
this moment's great.
And there's this confrontation between the two of them, which is really just
and
another.
he assaults the coach.
He does assault the coach because the coach pokes him twice on his shoulder to be like, the tough survive. And he's like, you want to see tough? And then like, I want to say like a fourth grader, he just grabs him by the
Yes.
thumb and just like twists, and the coach immediately goes down. Like he's found his Achilles heel.
That's all it takes.
It's all it takes to take down this coach. It really is amazing because the movie is positing that like the goths are kind of right in their vengeance against the bullies.
Right.
And that's nice to see, but it's also siding with the demon worship. I got really lost
Yeah.
about where this movie's allegiances lie, especially for being a Christian piece of entertainment.
Yes, and that's why I was like, the goths are clearly the most likable, but that feels like that shouldn't be the message I'm getting.
The goths have more of, and I think you kind of alluded to this, more of like an actual inner life. Like there's one scene
Yeah.
that I actually really thought was sweet where little goth girl and little goth boy like have a little moment together, and he like kisses her on the head and is like, we'll make through it together. We have, the power of Abel Fry on our side. And it's like, oh, these sweet little babies,
They're just trying to survive in a
Right.
school where they're constantly being beaten up or,
And where some of the teachers actively run interference for the bullies.
You know where there are no teachers? In Norman's Freaky Animal Palace.
That's true.
Where
Yes, like what? How can he keep all that stuff there?
I don't. My one note for this scene is there's a lot of overtones
Yeah,
here.
I was going to say, he shows her his snake. Like, and it's very...
She's like, ooh,
And
can
she
I
wraps
handle
it
your
sensually
snake?
around her neck. And
Yeah,
he's like,
and she's
stop
like
it,
very
don't do
tender.
it.
Yeah,
Don't
do
do
it.
that, Leighton.
They like do
It's
a
literally
close
porn.
up.
It's weird.
Very
But it's
strange scene.
anti-porn because he is saying no, don't touch my snake.
And also-
But he's like, you can touch
Yeah.
it, but you can't fully, whatever.
Go
Right.
all
Can't
the
go all the way with
Right,
this
right,
snake.
right.
while looking at this snake,
Wait, is this pre or post Britney?
Oh,
With the
you mean
snake.
the
Just
toxic?
curious.
No, which video was that?
it was- I think it was toxic.
Yeah, it's
Toxic,
toxic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
It's
pretty.
gotta
probably
be
the same
pre.
year.
Brittany stole it from
Anyway.
this movie, actually.
Right,
she was watching
exactly.
ABC
Yeah.
Family and she
She
said, I
saw
got an
it.
idea. No,
She said, that's hot.
well, the weirdest thing is that Alicia, when she looks at the snake, says, reminds me of a guy I dated. And I went,
Yes,
go
what?
to horny jail movie. Bye.
I actually read that as very literally saying that guy was a snake, and I think
Yes.
that's what they were going for. But I agree that it didn't
But
quite
how
come
could you
across
not
like
see
that.
the double entendre? Like, ugh.
Well, I know how they
They're
can't see the
too
double
Christian.
entendre.
They can't even
Yep.
see it anymore.
Yep.
But a very
Yeah.
important piece of plot that comes up here is that Norman has been to Africa. He went there on a student trip, which will come back a little bit later. Because
With a whole extra plot we never needed.
yeah, hey, guess what, friends? Norman in a horror movie? He probably did it. But
That's
You know,
funny.
I didn't even register that, but of course,
that makes so
of
much
course his
sense.
name is
one of the
Norman.
other students also bops in this scene, and she says, "Hello, I am leaving," and then leaves the room. And I'm like, okay. who are you? And everyone in this film is very worried about like rattling happening in the vents, as if vents just don't rattle normally. They're like, huh, that's really weird. There's something rattling in the vents. I choose not to investigate.
It
And
was
they just
very
kind
Chamber
of
of
keep going.
Secrets to me. I was like,
Yes.
oh no, there's something in the pipes.
Yeah. And we've met the basilisk, which is Norman's penis.
There's so many moments.
I really don't want to think about Norman's penis, but
There's
thank
so
you.
many moments in this movie because it's just so ineptly scripted where they lifted stuff out of the book and they pretty much just dropped it in place. But for the first like maybe 40 to 50 minutes of the movie, it is pretty much just a literal lift and drop job from the book, which is just straight up exactly beat for beat the same. But what they did was they took the
Just without any of the technical
no
skill.
changes. What they did though is they basically took the first 2/3 of the book, condensed it down into the first third of the movie, and then they made up everything else from then on out. But they still had all of this technical stuff from, well, not everything, but in broad strokes, they restructured quite a bit of it. So these threads that get paid off later on in the book never get paid off in the movie because it doesn't make sense, because they restructured the entire like thrust through to the climax and conclusion of the film.
Well, can I tell you the truth though? Both these screenwriters, they never worked again.
Never again.
Never again. This is the-
before and never again.
Yeah, both of them.
Are you just
So
on
don't
IMDb?
worry.
But that's what
They
this
got
industry
theirs.
is. That's what Christian movies are. You'll get these people who just like had one thing and then they wrote the one thing and then you never hear from them ever again. That's how Adventures in Odyssey started. It's just that ended up continuing on. And so like Paul McCusker, who wrote church skits, just kept writing for 2 decades.
Or you end up being like David A.R. White and you end up having this really improbable hit with God's Not Dead. And then you think that the reason that people watch this movie is because they liked your performance in it so much that you make the subsequent movies about your character. Fucking crazy.
So it feels like a lot of this movie, they just cut pivotal plot scenes to make room for more snake talk.
That is
And
exactly
I know
what they
that,
did.
That this pays off
And
later.
spider talk.
But at while you're watching it, you're just like, why is this at all important? It doesn't imbue like any of these scenes with any sort of importance.
I know Norman ends up being so important, but the 2 scenes you get with him in the first hour and 20 minutes make you think, cut this character.
Well,
Get
and
rid of
what's
him.
interesting too about the structure again of the screenplay compared to the, I really am just going to keep talking about the book because fuck it. Like
You're
part of
the
worth
only
it.
one
It's
who's
worth
read it.
talking about.
We
part
need
of
you, Josh.
also part of
And our listeners have read this book, so it's okay.
Part of what genuinely I thought made this kind of interesting, at least academically, it's not an interesting movie. It sucks ass and it's boring to watch, but
I think it's good, actually. It's like, it's right up there with It Follows for me.
That hurt my soul.
all of the scenes that she does with, what's his name, football guy?
Blake.
Blake, thank you. None of those scenes are in the book. They added all of that, and they added it at the expense of character building scenes with Norman.
They decided that
Yeah, why do we never find out anything about our freaking villain?
And that's what's weird, right? The book goes into
he likes snakes,
There
but
are
not too
a
much.
number of scenes.
do they give like just whole side scenes with Norman?
and they're pretty
Norman being
interesting,
Norman?
honestly. I mean, they're not great, but like
I would bet.
they're somewhat
Yeah.
interesting. They're way more interesting than that weird fucking scene where they're holding hands and walking next to the river or whatever. And
There is nothing that the teens love more than a chaste romance.
oh, so chaste, just the chastest of walks. But yeah, like part of it too is it ends up being a bit of a heel turn at the end that Norman, but he becomes a sympathetic villain in the book, where the whole reason that he wanted to do this was to sort of get his revenge. Again, it ties into the stuff with the goths and the other misfits, where they're in this pressure cooker where they have no way of sort of fighting back against the system other than using their own wits. And you start to learn this about Norman earlier on, but you don't actually learn that he is the person who is basically making mechanically possible this quote unquote curse. But it's really important character building, and it's completely absent from the movie, and so it makes no fucking sense.
It doesn't. And what's astounding to me is that after like pushing Norman to the side and cutting all of his scenes, we had to make room for the greatest cameo perhaps ever committed to film.
God.
And we will talk about Frank Peretti and his masterful performance as Dr. Algernon.
Good Lord.
Right after this
Oh my
message.
God, I wonder if he's in the GIA.
I wonder
our
if
sponsors.
wonder if anybody gave him any flowers.
Howdy, listeners. Larry Habsburg here from what was formerly known as Harry Habsburg's Hole in Fun mini golf course and gun depot, located in scenic Palm Beach, Florida. My brother, Harry Habsburg, he of the titular Harry Habsburg's Hole in Fun mini golf course and gun depot, was recently incarcerated for trying to wrestle a pelican what slept with his wife. So we are relaunching as Larry Habsburg's Hole in Fun mini golf course gun depot and Exotic Spider Emporium, or HHIFMGCGDESE. Same old Habsburg Hole in Fun experience, now with more spiders. Do you need spiders for your made-for-TV movie or actual picture show? Well, look no further than Larry Habsburg's Hole in Fun mini golf course, gun depot, and Exotic Spider Emporium. We got spiders from everywhere. Africa. So if you're looking for spiders and are too impatient for them to find you, we've got you covered. In spiders. We'll cover you in spiders. But don't take our word for it. Just ask our newest employee, Crazy Craig, who we recently covered in spiders. What do you say, Craig? Oh no, he is dead. Use the code name Crazy Craig to get 100% off any order of spiders as long as it's within the next whenever, because I think we might have one of those give a mouse a cookie situations, but with spiders and human flesh. Oh no! The spiders have taken control of the mini golf course and have learned to drive the carts. Larry Habsburg's is falling. I repeat, Larry Habsburg's is falling.
Larry Habsburg's Hole in Fun mini golf course, gun depot, and Exotic Spider Emporium is a subsidiary of Habsburg's Eclectic and Legal Potables Incorporated. All rights reserved. Member FDIC. Oh God, the spiders have gotten into my booth. Oh God, oh no, kill me. Somebody please kill me. Oh God.
Well,
Welcome back. That was a weird one. How did we get that sponsor?
Very carefully.
I sucked them
Oh my
off.
God.
No.
So
Yeah.
let's
We're talking about Christian horror.
Christian horror, and what really, like you were saying, AJ, what is more horrifying than the performance that Mr. Franklin Peretti, I'm assuming his full name is Franklin,
What if it's
turns
like
in
Francesco?
as Dr. Algernon?
Dr. Algernon Wheeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is Frank Peretti thinking that he is Christopher Lloyd.
Yes. And I would actually argue moderately succeeding, because at least when he's on screen, I'm not bored.
Yes.
In a way that I am with most of the rest of this movie.
That is correct.
I am obsessed with the way that he is introduced in this film, because he pulls up in his just shitty ass car and he gets out holding a banjo case. And the door of the RV swings open. The mom character, who up until this point has been mostly a non-entity, except when she's been like examining drug samples that seem dangerous and then just touching her face with the gloves. Like gloves 101, take them off. She comes out of the RV and she says, Dr. Algernon, the acoustics professor. Like he's a cat in cats that has come his turn to introduce himself. Dr. Algernon is an acoustics professor. And he just brings out his banjo and he plays this little song, and maybe he'll get to the heaviside layer.
Right. Hard to say.
That was a
Hard
really
to
good
say.
take on Andrew Lloyd Webber's melodies, I gotta say, AJ.
Oh,
was.
thank you so
It was.
much.
It was nice.
I've watched the Cats movie 3 times because
don't
that is a
know-
horror movie I can stand.
I don't know why you would do that
No
to
tops
yourself.
on that
Too many
one.
times.
The movie.
Me, I wish that movie had been worse. I felt like it was too much on the edge of like trying to, like I felt like it's not good, and it's also could be much worse. And if it was much worse, it would have been much more enjoyable.
Yeah, you know,
It needed more discussion about prayer in schools.
Yes.
That's what I think would have
Idris
made
Elba
Cats
as
the
McCavity
perfect
turned out
movie.
and says, "I'm taking prayer out of schools, McCavity," and like vanished, I'd be like, yeah, no, 5 out of 5.
I was thinking at once I finished up last night, I was like, what is a movie that I've enjoyed less than this one in recent memory? And actually the answer is Cats, which I watched during the pandemic. And then the very next night I watched Uncut Gems, which is one of my favorite movies. And so similarly to clear...
You did the same
I did the
thing
same
last
thing.
night.
I watched Uncut Gems last night after I watched this fucking thing because I needed to remember what tension in a movie felt like.
Yeah, Josh loves inducing panic attacks. That's why he
I
watches
was
Uncut
going to
Gems.
say, that movie was rough to watch in the pandemic because it was I was already like on edge and I was like, I can't do this.
When I watched Hangman's Curse, I had already gotten through a couple episodes of Midnight Mass,
Oh, so good.
like a couple nights before. So then I was like, I'm going to go back to Midnight Mass and watch this other Christian horror thing, but from a totally different angle.
I would argue that
and
Cats is more a sociological experiment than it is a film.
I never will allow any Andrew Lloyd Webber notes in this podcast
Thank you, Brian.
ever in
Thank
my
you,
life.
Brian.
But
Not once.
But
Frank Wildhorn, fine. Weber,
wow, okay,
Yeah.
shots fired.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Great, so I'll sing
Where I'm
Death
at.
Note the musical, and that'll make the cut. Fine.
Oh yeah,
that makes
totally.
fucking sense.
Yeah. That line is they're definitely singing about their balls.
They are, and it's
They're
great.
singing
We
about their
are
balls.
so far off the rails right now, it's not even
Yeah, I was like,
funny.
come back to Frank.
Let's pull back
So
to Frank.
Algernon
Let's get back
Wheeling,
to Frank.
Frank Peretti pulls out his banjo and starts singing about his balls.
Yeah, he comes into the RV and just starts making choices. He's moving around. He's fiddling with shit.
That's one thing. Yeah,
he
you
did
can
a lot
say
of
that.
self-direction, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, he sits down in a chair, he pulls out his banjo, and then he just doesn't play the banjo, and the next shot, the banjo is completely gone, and he's instead eating Twinkies. Like, it's
Right.
almost good comedy if it had just kept cutting back to him and he just had a different thing in his hands. Like, I would have been like, yeah. And there are a couple times in this movie where there are almost jokes. Like, when they're
Yeah.
trying to break into the school,
Yeah.
and Elijah's like, I'll use my FBI training, and then he kicks the door, and then nothing happens. Like, had he thrown himself against the door and hit the floor, I would have been like, oh, that's a good
Well, that
joke.
would-
And then there's the whole
Yeah.
there's the whole running joke about how Son Cop was like, I did FBI training instead of learning how to drive.
Yeah.
And Daughter Cop just keeps owning him because of
Well,
that.
it
Yeah.
goes.
Like,
You know what it
you don't know
really
how to
actually
drive
does
'cause you're
remind me of
FBI
is like
trained.
Spy Kids was mentioned earlier, and it's just like a really. It's an ineffective version of that dynamic, right? Because the give and take in
Right.
Spy Kids is so funny the way they genuinely have great chemistry in that movie as brother and sister. It's very believable. So this Frank Peretti cameo is interesting because, right, like you said, he's making a lot of really strong choices. He's directing himself largely. I don't know what the circumstances were that led to him having this, what should be a cameo, but ultimately ends up really being somewhere between a feature role to
like
a
the
full-on.
linchpin of the plot.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's like the most important part of the mystery.
Which is also weird because, again,
this family doesn't do shit. All they do is collect a couple of chemicals and then he does the rest of the
Did
work.
anyone not? Because I didn't know that he was in it when I watched this movie, so that was something I learned later.
Oh.
After watching.
Yeah,
Did
I
anyone
saw-
else have that experience?
I saw his name in the credits, and then when this character appeared, I'm like, I bet that's Frank Peretti.
Okay.
There's like no way that's not him.
Lauren, did you know?
I knew, but just because I'm like an IMDb
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay.
nerd when I watch movies.
I get it.
I didn't know until I started, but like once it began.
Lauren, as the IMDb nerd, can you tell me if the Margaret Travolta in this film
is related to
a
John
Travolta?
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Unrelated. I looked it up. Unrelated.
I was very
And-
curious.
David Keith
I know.
is also not related to Keith David. I know it's French.
to know.
It's always good when you name your kid the mirror image of your name.
He's the guy who knows about spiders, I guess.
I love to call my spider guy.
Whatever, spider guy, whatever's going on with this situation has something to do with spiders, and this is the guy who knows things about spiders. So keep that in the back of your head.
He's the acoustics professor,
Right, who knows about spiders. Weird.
and he will do as he do.
Meanwhile, Elijah goes to a house, and it's not at all explained before this scene why he's going
It's
there.
just like, we're at a house right now.
And it turns out that this house is the house of Abel Fry's sister, who pulls a gun on him but then invites him inside.
Again, the smallest gun you've ever seen.
And we learn in this scene then from her exposition that
I
Abel
love to point guns at kids. I just love
lived
it.
with his-
It's a Spokane tradition, and I'm glad to carry it on.
Pointing
myself,
guns at children.
so, yeah.
We learned that Abel lived with his family and he got bullied the fuck out of him. And it's actually the bullying that pushed him over the edge. This stuff about stabbing
he
a
didn't
girl is
kill his
not
girlfriend,
true.
None of that.
And then
There's something almost interesting there,
Yeah.
but it isn't at the end of the day.
Honestly, her performance though is great. I just have to
does
call
do a good
that.
job,
I
yeah.
thought she was one of the best monologues.
I agree.
except for the last line that she says, which was like a total one take in your golden moment, where she goes, "I hope they rot in hell for what they did to my brother and to my family." It was just like this. It sounded like she forgot to finish the sentence.
Whatever they did to my brother.
She was highlighting.
Yeah,
she was highlighting my family. There are other family members, in case you didn't know.
And meanwhile, Leighton Meester is crawling through the school, and finally,
Again, like, we've seen, it's the same searching sequence that we've seen
we've
three
lost
fucking
another
times.
football player at this point.
Right.
Leonard tripped balls in shop class.
Right.
Yeah,
He's out of
all
the picture
those,
now.
And all those like tripping ball segments look like an intro to like a 2001 episode of House. Like,
Yeah. And what they said about Leonard is that he started tripping balls faster or something. There's like a little almost throwaway line
We're
that's
running out of time.
supposed to be very important
Right.
because it, I guess, deals with the way these spiders are breeding.
we finally get to like the inner sanctum, right? And I don't know, I thought
Pentagram
this
on
was
the
actually
floor.
kind of cool. I like the set dressing here. Finally, for once.
She wandered into the set of
yeah.
Suspiria.
Yeah, I like this. I like the little dolls. I like the
Yeah.
They look nice.
The pentagram
They're not
on the
shot
floor.
particularly well, but they look fine.
yeah.
Abel Fry's name written backwards on the wall, which
Red rum.
which is the stupidest thing I think I've ever seen.
but we'll take it. We'll
I
take
mean,
it.
at this
they
point, like,
can't-
at least camp. Give us some fucking
This
camp.
is another weird, I guess it's also kind of a Spy Kids thing. Because for whatever reason, the only way they hear the names in the chants is by playing it backwards.
Yeah, what?
If it's a
Which
madman,
doesn't
help
even,
us,
like,
save
you
us.
hear the kids when they're chanting in the
Exactly.
school, they're not talking backwards like doing Twin Peaks speech.
Right.
They just took the recording and played it backwards later when we're in the camper
Whatever.
and then played it forwards again.
It really-
Because fuck you,
Everything that
Brian.
happens in that camper is just like pretend science.
Yeah, well, it-
pretend science.
And what's also none of that shit in the RV really matters. Like it's to drive along the spider bullshit, but ultimately that's a MacGuffin. Like it doesn't actually matter how any of that happens. Ultimately, what matters is that we get to the point of knowing that spiders are causing the poison thing to
Right.
occur.
But there's this whole thing where apparently it's getting worse.
Right.
Which again, you just cut that. None of this matters.
Right.
But I guess it matters because of the Africa thing, which I'm just now piecing together.
It only
and that's
makes
not
sense. It
worthwhile.
makes sense in the book because again, you can do stuff like that in a book. You can't do stuff like that in a movie. At least not
I
this
also
one.
have to get into this. So I'm in brown recluse territory.
Oh, yeah.
The brown recluse spider is everywhere
God.
here. It's a fucked up little guy.
That's scary.
Yeah, it'll really fuck you up.
Nasty. A bite gets really infected, and in the worst case scenario, the area becomes necrotic. It rots as if it were dead.
Ew.
It literally,
I just learned a
that
new
part
word.
of your
That's fun.
body starts to die and necrosis starts.
Necrosis.
That's worst case scenario. It's not going to happen from most bites, but it stays localized. It does not get into your brain and give you COVID psychosis.
Right. But these are
and-
hybrid spiders, Brian.
But yeah, they're hybridized with these African wolf spiders,
Yeah.
which they don't do anything to you. I think they do actually have some venom, but it doesn't affect people. Their bites can hurt because they're very large.
Yeah, but nobody seems to notice that there are spiders crawling on them and biting them, which is the most implausible part of this
Which,
entire
again,
movie.
they have large mandibles. You will feel that fucking bite.
Also, every spider in this movie is a tarantula. Like, I'm not wrong about that, right? Like, the spider handler
Yeah,
just threw
they're-
tarantulas
yeah,
on everyone.
Which
Because
again,
tarantulas are mostly
Those-
harmless, right?
Those large spiders, they're not going to kill you. They're not going to make you trip balls. I get that it's a horror movie and they're doing it with this, but at the same time,
One more time.
they took a spider that does not poison human beings when it bites them and said that it's going to poison them to death. Like, pick it. You already got the brown recluse. Good job. Get a black
That
widow.
is weird.
Something
Right.
else.
It also,
But
to be
it has to be African, just like the drug dealer has to be Gomez.
To be clear, though, in the book, it's not 24 large tarantulas. It's a million centimeter long spiders.
Right.
Which is so much fucking scarier.
That's very scary.
And that's what brown
terrifying.
recluses are like. They're so small you can't see them,
Right.
hence the name.
And so in the book, there's these
That's much
really
better imagery.
rich, terrifying descriptions of, particularly down in like these basement areas where the spiders are breeding, that you just have the walls that are like moving because they're just coated in spiders.
No.
Right? That's scary.
No,
They didn't have the money for that.
No,
They couldn't do
thank
that.
you.
Wait, but I'm going through something over here. So like guy on the football field death that starts off the movie, he had a giant spider on him that no one noticed.
Well, it's a fine life carrying the spider through it all.
I think he still had a small spider, but other people had a giant one. This is where it's
like
really
in these
confusing.
very public
Right.
places.
Because they put a spider in a straw.
Right.
The spider secretes
Right.
pheromones, which leads to the worst line in this movie. Out of
Let's hear it.
stiff competition, but it says the kids might call it a chemical booty call.
Oh, I
In
don't even
reference
remember
to
that.
spider pheromones.
I
That's
literally
one of Frank
felt
Peretti's
my sex
lines.
drive die while watching him say that line.
Yeah, I'm never gonna have sex again, and but also the movie.
Oh boy.
I just really wish this had just been a ghost story about a legend about a kid who had hung
Me
himself in
too.
high school.
Right, and so somehow this spider
It's so
attracts
complicated.
another spider, which then I guess hangs out in your pocket or something, and then it bites you at some point. You never notice,
Right.
and then you trip balls until you die.
Which again only really makes sense if the spider is this large. If it's a tarantula, you would
Right.
fucking notice by
but it
virtue of being
also
a tarantula.
doesn't really
Right.
make sense.
No, not
either.
really.
Like, why are they putting a spider in a straw?
It's the perfect crime, Brian.
Like,
it
why
couldn't be
wouldn't they
more
just
simple.
take a spider and put it like on your neck?
Well, and there's also
But-
this stuff with how like there is pheromones on the money, and by giving like that's why the scenes
Yeah,
with these
the-
kids getting mugged is important because the money has the pheromone
Oh,
on
that's
it, and
right.
it doesn't really make sense.
It's like way too
Wait,
complicated.
and then it
then-
goes on that one girl's sweater.
Right.
That
Well, it was,
Oh, that's
it was
in her
on the
po- the
sweater,
money's
and then
in
the
her
money was in her
pocket.
pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Oh, the
then,
money's in her
daughter
pocket.
cop
But I like
gets
that she
targeted.
wore the sweater because she wanted to be Leighton's friend.
That was cute.
Yeah, so
That was
daughter
very
cop,
nice.
Daughter cop gets targeted. Redheaded goth girl is sad, and
Yeah.
she's like, "What's wrong?" And the redheaded goth girl's like, "Someone poured coffee on me, or
Soda.
something."
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
someone poured soda
Some
on
sody
me,
pop.
and daughter cop was like, "Here, have my sweater," which then curses this young goth girl to get spidered to death.
Because they were supposed to spider Leighton Meester. She was going to be the next target because she knew too much, but
Yeah. Well, she was the redheaded goth girl was leaning. Crystal is her name. Was leaning up against the vending machine, and there's just this long moment where there's music playing underneath her, and she's kind of staring off in the middle distance. And I think this is when she reaches in her pocket to get the dollar bill, but it lasts for like 10 seconds of just like this musical vamping. I'm
Yeah.
like, if she bursts into song, I will forgive this movie everything.
then
shit.
it's like right after this, we do have a musical number.
We
of
sure
sorts.
do. The curse of
And
the
then it gets
hangman.
meta.
the whole reason at this point that Leighton Meester is marked for death is that when she was down there in the inner sanctum, she saw too much. And one thing that we forgot to mention is that there was actually a guy down there dressed up as a skeleton who then was chasing her around and potentially trying to kill her.
Yeah, and you know what? There's nothing that
sure.
screams threat like something you can just knee in the balls.
I was going to say, and then
He was so easily dispatched.
Not
Like,
to mention
there was
that
no
also
danger from Skullman.
at some point her brother showed up down there too, and it was like, we got to get out of here. It's like, wait, why? Don't you like know kung fu or something? Like you're like the most you're
Went to
incredibly
the
the
correspondence
FBI.
course.
Let's go to our inner sanctum,
the theater.
the Thesra.
The Curse of the Hangman, the play. I did not pause to see the playwright of this play.
This high
and now I'm
school-
regretting it.
is doing the most avant-garde shit of any high school in America.
Yeah.
They just have like a modern dance company that does daytime performances
Yep.
of local legends.
House lights fully up.
It's
no
so
lighting
good.
on stage.
Is this supposed to be related to the kid who hanged himself 10 years
And
ago?
a local legend. They're doing a play about a local legend that's also currently killing
happening.
or putting children into comas.
Yes.
And they're making it into like a period thing where it's like 300 years old, like the 47 Samurai. that one's just for me.
But this was maybe my favorite part of the whole movie was this whole sequence.
Agreed.
By the way,
and another scene that I was like, this can't be happening.
It's one of those things that's so stupid. You just wish the rest of the movie was on this wavelength.
I agree.
Because it would
Exactly.
fucking.
It almost looked like everyone was gathered to watch a rehearsal because none of those kids were in sync. Every light in the place was on.
And then the teacher comes on stage.
They're
and she's
doing
like,
their best, AJ. Jesus Christ.
One of the extras is just in fully modern clothes while everyone else around them is in like Crucible costumes.
Also worth noting here, to the point of...
It's like you've never done a high school play before, AJ. It's true.
I was just going to say, have you seen high
to the
school
point
theater?
of this being
We
something...
didn't all get to work with Aaron Sorkin.
that is
for God's sake.
so
drag
much
me, why
more
don't you?
fun and off the wall than much of the other stuff in this movie. Generally speaking, the farther away they get from the source material, the goofier it gets. None of this is in the book. They completely, like, not even anything resembling this.
I imagine
fully
this
made
was
this
sort
whole
of
sequence up.
like the John Peters, let's put a giant spider in this movie, no matter what movie it was.
Right.
Thing
The
where
Wild Wild
like
West syndrome,
this director was just like, I need a modern dance sequence.
I thought it was maybe stolen from like Scream 2, where there's like that whole chase scene around the theater.
It feels very Scream too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear, because, we've done, and I've done especially a bit of recapping. I would, again, love to hear Felicia and Lauren relate to us now sort of your memory of how this scene plays out, because it is so fucking weird, and I want to hear it out of, your mouths and your memories.
I mean, honestly, it looks like something I directed.
Felicia starts describing a very similar yet slightly different play that she did.
But I will also say that this scene has one of the most emotionally well done scenes, which is when the redheaded girl has her freak out or whatever, her reaction, and her goth friend is like, oh my God, oh no. And I was like, oh, this is like the first real performance I've seen of someone getting in one of these comas.
Yeah. It really it really
So
was. It
good.
was like there were real emotional stakes in that moment that I was like, I actually was invested in and cared about, which again
too.
is why the goths should be the protagonists of this movie. Because I was like, look, he sacrificed everything for this god, and this god has betrayed him. That's at least a story.
And Lauren, I wanted to ask Lauren what she thought about this theater moment.
Oh my gosh, I just thought it was so wild. Yeah, I couldn't really, I just couldn't, it was something else that I really needed to rewatch because I was like, they can't be talking about Abel Fry.
Can you describe
movie.
what happens, please?
Out of body experience.
I don't have a good
They're
enough
doing
memory
a
of
play
what was going on.
that is seemingly set in the Crucible years, which is maybe why I've also related Abel Fry to the Crucible. Where they're showing, I guess, that some sort of, what I assume is that some sort of demon worship caused this boy to hang himself. So demons are bad or something. And there's dancing.
Right. Beautiful dancing.
Hot take, folks. You heard it here first. Demons, bad.
And yeah, this play is cut short then because at this point, little goth girl gets bit and dies. Just straight up dies.
Seemingly.
Yeah, someone
She dies?
takes her pulse.
No, she comes
even,
back.
and-
I thought she died.
No, she comes
No,
back
she
at the end.
comes back at
she
the
comes
end.
back.
Remember, she's not goth anymore, and she loves Jesus.
She does like the
She's
anti-Sandy
I'm
transformation.
cool now 'cause I'm not a goth anymore.
Let's
Yeah.
play some
Yep.
frisbee
Yes.
and have the world's
Yep.
worst picnic.
That's what I thought it was. Anyway, so then little goth boy is so distressed in this moment that he right then and there decides that he's going to end it all. He's
Okay, so that was why when Felicia stopped describing, I was like, and then doesn't he run up and
He
try
sure
to kill
does.
himself? But I was
Sure
like,
does.
it doesn't happen that
I
fast.
like that
it does.
Well,
Is that just at the act break, or are they doing 2 matinees for their own high school?
well, they had shut the curtain at that point, and then I guess somebody opens the
The
curtain.
teacher rushes them
Right.
off stage.
But
Well,
they're
it seemed like the curtain was going to open because they were going to start the show.
they're going to
again?
start. I guess. I think it was to keep.
The show must go on.
It must.
Yeah.
This probably sounds very confusing to anybody who has not seen this. So just to lay out exactly what happens in sequence. After
No. We're not going to do this because it's not going to stop being confusing.
After-
No, we're not going to waste their time with this.
After little
What-
goth girl dies, he goes up on stage to the fucking...
Right. The Curse of the Hangman, they have a gallows right there
he
with the
puts
noose.
the rope around his neck, and he is about
Which is
to
also like
jump off
bad
and hang
stagecraft.
himself.
You should tell your crew how to tie a fake noose, first of all.
Why is this prop a working
Right.
hanging device.
Exactly.
Fucked up situation.
That's how you end up with dead kids. This place is Hogwarts.
And especially again, where the legend.
It's like the Sweeney Todd High School that used real blades and like sliced kids. Did you
They
hear that
sure
story?
That did actually happen, so maybe we're in the wrong here.
Oh man.
No, but the reason this is so confusing to remember is because there's a lot of intercuts between that, what's happening on stage, and Alicia investigating the ventilation
Right,
system
right.
with her handy dandy mirror that she just happens to carry around with her everywhere.
Yeah,
And then
we're
later,
still like
a
starting to
camera.
learn about the spiders.
She also has a rolly bag with a biohazard suit in it.
Just in case, I guess. She has to go into the vents of a school where she would need a biohazard uniform. I don't know. I
And
love
where did
this.
she get the biohazard uniform?
government.
the RV.
The government.
Yeah.
it was all in there.
The goth kid Ian tries to hang himself, but is immediately caught and put back up.
But what's interesting is that he tries to hang himself. Sun Cop is like, don't. And then the curtain opens up. Goth Kid is standing there, and this was almost a good scene.
Yeah.
Like there's like a universe where this fucking like actually worked and became the center that they built the rest of the movie around. Because
Yeah.
he's standing there on the gallows with the noose around his neck. The curtain opens. All of the students are looking, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, fuck yeah,
Like,
jump,
do it,
jump,
do
dude,
it."
do it, do it, do it."
But it was unclear because some kids were mouthing, "Don't do it."
Yeah. But
But
most
also
were
a
just
kid
like,
that looks
yeah,
like a
why not?
35-year-old man. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on.
It's the Evan Hansen effect.
Oh. Well, no, Josh, there was no tree on stage that he could jump from,
Right.
which is, that classic form of suicide, jumping
Right.
out of a tree. The one we're all
Wait,
familiar
is that
with.
how he
but no.
commits suicide in Dear Evan Hansen?
Yeah, that's how he tries to.
He jumps
That's
out of a tree.
that's why his arm is broken.
With a wait.
Oh my
like-
God! Spoilers
like
for
he
Dear Evan
hangs
Hansen,
himself?
I guess.
Or, wait, does he jump out of a tree just onto the ground?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No,
No, he
and I
doesn't die.
thought
That's
the
how he
same-
breaks his arm.
That's
I
how he
thought
breaks
you
his
meant
arm.
like he was hanging himself from a tree.
No, he just jumps.
No.
He just
Oh
jumps
my
out of a
God.
tree because he's so sad. He's a sad.
He's
a
not
sad,
trying
anxious
that
boy.
hard to kill
Clearly.
himself. It's like a light killing
like-
himself.
But then he just accidentally succeeds.
No. That's Connor.
No.
Connor
No,
actually
no.
kills himself.
Wait, there's another suicide attempt in the
Yes,
movie?
yes.
Well,
Evan
he does it.
Hansen,
Yeah.
Evan Hansen attempts to kill himself, but Connor actually succeeds in killing
Right.
himself. Spoilers for Dear Evan Hansen. So sorry, everyone. Go see the movie. It's a masterpiece. I can't even say it with a straight
The worst
face.
thing about this is that it's heterosexual. So,
Yes,
he gets
that is the worst
rescued.
thing.
He doesn't successfully hang himself
Right.
because there's too many people nearby.
They actually catch his feet as he is stepping
Yeah.
off.
It is so immediately negated any and all danger from
Yeah.
this situation. It's just to be like, no,
they're really protecting the
But
viewer.
there's this whole thing going on between Sun Cop and the Goth Kid, where Sun Cop throughout this movie, because he's a Judeo-Christian, who is like, this Abel Fry thing, you're dealing with a demon, you really shouldn't be doing this. This is bad stuff. And then like while this guy's gonna kill himself, he's like, the Abel Fry has betrayed me.
I fell up in this world.
And Sun Cop is like, yeah, you shouldn't be messing with demons, which I think is not only Sun Cop, but the movie saying that the ghost of Abel Fry is real,
Right.
is an
Yeah.
actual demon impersonating the dead Abel Fry that people just happen to be seeing also because of the spiders that are poisoning them.
Right.
Which is
That
very
doesn't make any
confusing because we
sense.
barely know
Right.
anything about the spiders at this
Right.
point. And they're just starting to set up
Right.
that this is just a spider thing.
Right.
But apparently it's not just a spider thing and there is actually a ghost.
And it turns out in the
What?
book, the way they clear this in the book, which makes a lot more sense, is that there was no Abel Fry. Abel Fry wasn't even a real person. It was the name of the boat that the spiders came over on in the first place. And the kid Norman, who created Norman, who did the whole experiment with the spiders in the first place, created the myth of the ghost of Abel Fry to scare the shit out of everybody. There was
But
no
wasn't
ghost.
The whole thing that Norman was mad because his uncle died?
That was all added for the movie. None of that
Oh my
is in
God.
the book, and it makes a lot more sense because instead it's just this kid who's pissed
it's
off.
still kind of bad.
Well, no, it doesn't.
It's
It doesn't.
not
But,
great.
but to be clear, at least the motivation makes sense. Where it's like this kid is just upset that people are bullying him, and so he creates this myth of a ghost to scare the shit out of everybody while deploying some sort of biological warfare on them.
Unbelievable.
This
And
movie's
see, this is-
How does he
exhausting.
quickly create a ghost like
Well,
that, though? He just spreads.
I guess he just did a really good job of
quick
building a
legend.
legend.
This is why this is like C tier Frank Peretti.
Right.
because Frank Peretti's at his best when there's actually demons around.
And this would have been so much stronger if there were. I mean, Felicia's
if
talked
this
about
was just
this. I
actually
think.
about a hanged kid that was
Haunting the bullies at the school. Genius.
yeah.
Yeah, and if you were able to find out like the reasons why he killed himself were a little bit more complicated, or wasn't like what it appeared to be at first, like maybe there was like a secret cabal of like teachers who were like accidentally like summoned a demon and then he witnessed it, so they had to kill him, and like if there was an actual like like cool
Watch
like
that movie.
yeah, I think that's a fun idea.
If there was actually a
Write
horror
that.
movie somewhere in here,
yeah, if there was actually a horror
Wait,
movie.
isn't there a horror movie that a ghost was a kid that
The Gallows.
hung himself and
Is
then
that one?
yeah, maybe.
I think it's the Gallows.
It's like he's like killing off teenagers one by one, but it was like a bullied kid that kills himself. I was wondering if it was.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know.
I mean, it's a
Someone
very
saw this
fertile
and
concept.
said
There's a good movie in here
Yeah.
somewhere. It's just not this one.
there's a good movie in here somewhere, and we're going to destroy that movie and make a bad one instead.
From this point on, I mean, this really we move pretty quickly, through the remaining.
It turns into an action movie.
It
almost.
becomes an action movie, yeah. Which
There's spiders everywhere.
and again, it's not a million teeny tiny spiders. It's roughly 24 tarantulas.
The coach goes from that moment at the beginning when like his third football player has succumbed to the spider sickness, where he's like talking to the principal or somebody, or he's like, you need to do something about this. Nothing's happened yet. And then when there's spiders everywhere, he's like, who cares about some little spiders?
Right.
That have put 5 of
That's
my
how I felt the whole movie.
kids
Who
in the
cares
hospital.
about spiders?
But he's just like, I'm not some fucking pussy. I've stopped caring about this entire issue entirely.
Right.
And then he gets spidered to death. He's
sure
the
does.
he's the only one who actually
That's
dies
right, he is.
in this movie
Yeah.
because he just gets so many spiders.
Yeah, like it almost looks like the spiders are gonna eat him, but that's
Right.
not what spider do. So like they just kind of just like end up crawling all over him, and it's a pretty lame
that's enough.
death. Like there's a point where a spider like tries to jump the camera a little bit for like a jump scare, but it just looks so silly because it's a little like
So
stuffed animal
correct
spider.
me if I'm wrong, because I'm actually not certain if this is what happened. So Abel Fry killed himself 10 years ago.
Yes.
That I'm clear on. He was in the custody of his sister rather than their parents.
Yes.
His sister had a son.
Yes.
Son is the snake kid.
Son of Snake Boy.
Correct, yeah.
And so the snake kid found out that goths were cursing football players. And then every time they cursed someone, he used one of his secret cameras to see who it was. And then he put the spiders in their locker without the goth kids knowing.
But-
and so the goth kids just kept thinking it was Abel Fry doing it,
Right,
when it was
right.
really just this other kind of loser with spiders.
Who was not
But-
colluding with the goths at all. That is correct.
Yes, but also he has 2
Yeah.
different sets of spiders, and he has to get one of them inside of a straw
Yeah,
with,
he's got
with
two
some
spi- two
sugar
different
on
spiders.
both ends, and he's got to plant the other spider on them while also having he has to rub one spider all over the dollar bills, which
AJ,
will
I'm
then
glad that both you and I went fully Pepe Sylvia for this.
yeah.
Because
Knocking on the door, it's Carol, Carol, the spiders.
And I certainly didn't understand that when I saw this the first time. I don't know what I walked away with thinking, whatever.
Yeah.
But I watched it this time and I was like, what's happening?
Right.
Yeah.
What is happening in this movie?
It is an incredibly complex plan for a high schooler to concoct. Like that's, I think, one of the most unbelievable things about this movie, that it was so many steps that he had to take to get there. And also that his uncle was just pelted by eggs. Where were these teenagers getting all these eggs? They were just walking by and it was just like,
How
oh,
did
well,
the
just daily
skateboarders
egg
get
supply.
the eggs? Because they were coming from the other direction. And I felt
forgot
like they got
when they
those.
show
It's bring your egg to school day. Throw it at the nerds.
when your movie's gonna go all the way there and show how this guy got Joker-fied, that's the best you're gonna show is just
Right.
him walking
Eggs.
down through his suburban neighborhood and getting an egg thrown at him.
No.
Like,
He got free
Teens are
breakfast.
much worse than that.
Yeah, teens
Like-
are much worse than that.
Also,
Like, I mean, if someone threw a bunch of eggs at me, that would be fucking terrible. But it doesn't look good in a movie.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much more you could do there.
Yeah.
I did like that it was like a couple people threw eggs and then some other people were like skating up behind them and then they threw eggs.
That's what yeah. Brian, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
So I watched this movie and I was like, this is a really bad movie. But I wasn't convinced that it was the worst movie ever made But after you retelling the plot to me in that way, that was so clear. Like now I'm very convinced that this is the worst movie I've ever seen. So congratulations to everybody here.
Everyone is bullying me now. I'm Abel Fry.
We have
I am
found the
in
worst
the
of all possible
land
movies.
of brown recluse spiders.
You are.
We call Brian the Abel Fry of our podcast.
More and more people are saying this.
More and more are saying this.
So basically, the family goes all action commando, and they try and get to the bottom of these spiders. Alicia confronts Norman in his weird little like pet shop, which is also
She's
the
in
place.
her hazmat suit now, too,
Right.
by the way.
Yes, which is
There's also a noose
where
down there for some reason.
Yeah, his uncle hung himself. No, this is in the attic. We're in the attic where his uncle hung
Or noose
himself.
up there,
It
rather.
did feel like we were low. It felt like we were in a low.
But the
Yeah,
noose,
but then
the
she has to
noose is
fall
still
through the
there.
floor, remember?
Right.
She has to fall through the
Yeah.
floor to hit the
Fall very
God, what a
far.
mess.
very, very far and break her leg. And there's a spotlight right on the noose for some
Right,
reason. Like
right.
he's really like
personal
he's
thing.
going very camp, Norman, in this moment. But he has this whole monologue where he's
I'm
like,
the hangman. This is my case.
well, he at one point says, "Do you understand? They were tearing me apart. Do you understand? They were tearing out all of my organs." And let me remind you that her name is Alicia, which means that we missed out on a very, very opportune joke here, which is Norman turning to her and saying, "They were tearing me apart, Alicia."
Dang it, Norman.
We were so
If
close.
they had pulled that off like 2 years before the room was filmed,
He's just kind of like doing the Dexter monologue, basically, right? Like, he's just being Dexter. He's got a knife. None of this makes sense at this point either.
That
You know,
knife, by the way, vanishes at opportune moments.
Yeah.
At one point, he trips and falls, and he gets back up, and there's no knife. And then the next scene, there's the knife. So,
It was
I thought he had fallen on his knife.
it was around here.
he's just got a lot of knives and he just keeps dropping them. He's a real butterfinger.
It was around here that I took the note, how am I this drunk after 3 Heinekens? This doesn't make sense. And I couldn't tell if it was like this was around the time that I was really glad that I was drinking, because I was just like, if I had to watch this whole thing fully sober, I don't think I would have made it through it, genuinely.
So Alicia falls through the floor of this hangman's place, or like she crawls down and she breaks her leg while hitting into the middle of the pentagram. And then Norman comes in and is like, "Well, you know too much." And he has his knife and she's like, "Oh, please don't kill me." And he says, "I've never killed anyone." And he tears open her hazmat suit so the spiders can get in, because they're
that's
just
not how that
surrounded
works.
by spiders. And then he turns to her and says, "I don't want to go to jail where there's going to be a lot of these other bullies, the same type of bullies that have been bullying me here. So I'm gonna end it." And he pulls out a little tarantula friend and he opens his shirt and he makes the spider
I totally
bite
forgot
him.
about that.
Right.
And if you had told me at the start of this movie that it would end with suicide by spider, I would have never believed you in a million years.
I'm also like, you got that knife. Like, I don't know. There's
Yeah,
probably-
just
I don't
stab
know.
yourself, man.
Just stab
Be a
her.
man.
And so she's lying there. There are spiders filling up her suit and on top of her suit. And he's got the spider just chowing down on his sternum. And what saves daughter cop in the end? What saves her?
Prayer.
Prayer in school.
Yeah,
Oh,
She
yeah.
does a prayer.
Oh, I didn't think
In
about it.
the
in
school.
Oh my God.
But yeah,
And
this is where the
then-
Christian music starts playing.
I'm diving in. I'm going deep.
She sings "Jesus Loves Me, This I Know." Does she not?
Oh no, is
Yep.
this script actually brilliant?
No,
Like-
no, it's not,
Cops
AJ.
come in and the paramedics come in and Algernon has just made his special formula for
anti-poison.
not
What is it?
spidering to death. But
antivenom.
it's not,
Antidote?
Antivenom.
it's not gonna work for the coach. Sorry, too bad. And then everyone else gets brought back to life, and it turns out the football players and the goth girl are alive, I guess. And then they're all playing catch and they're having a picnic and they love the Lord now.
What's
Yeah.
amazing I really wanted her to be dead. I really wanted it to do the jump cut to him flipping burgers, and he's flipping burgers at a funeral, just going over and celebrating the wake.
Those are the worst hamburger patties too.
Oh, they look so dry,
so bad.
They're
don't they?
fucking briquettes.
Oh
at
my
that
You know what
point.
God.
I'm really sensing now is that so much of this really was taken from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah.
Like we have the spiders, we have the talking in the walls.
We have the snakes.
have the snakes.
We have a ginger character.
You sure do. Who gets in way over her head and has a seizure in front of everyone, in front of a school.
Man, this is kind of crazy.
Does that happen to Ginny Weasley?
Yeah.
There were a lot of authors at this time, and maybe Peretti was thinking this way, where Christian authors, I mean, who were like, we need to offer an alternative to Harry Potter.
Right.
And Frank Peretti
We need
100% believes that Harry Potter contains with it demonological texts.
Yeah.
Right.
Total.
And yeah, look at who J.K. Rowling turned out to be.
Yeah.
It's depressing.
Yeah, no. All she had to
Really
do
ruined
was
it for all of us.
all she really had to do was say nothing. You know?
That's it. Just
Just
be
say
a
nothing.
bajillionaire.
Just say it.
Just chill in your little big giant house.
But you knew something was going to happen after she wrote the history of magic in North America. You knew something was coming.
Yeah, no, that was really rough. I mean, something about getting that much money just like rots your brain entirely. I think we've said that on this podcast
Yeah.
before, but
I
like
think that's probably true.
yeah. Ugh. But anyway, so
And
we're
so-
at this picnic with the worst spread I've ever seen at any picnic ever. There's no potato
Also,
salad.
they are grateful for it.
The worst
they
of all
pray
possible
all over
They
it.
pray all over it, and you know what they do all over each other is play that frisbee because
That's
good
right.
God, they get into a big pile and it's just like Kiss though. Like Ian and Blake at one point, like Blake puts his arm around Ian and he's just
oh
like,
my good
hey,
God.
you know, she's pretty hot.
Again,
huh?
the overtones.
It was pretty.
no.
Not
yeah.
undertones.
Super overtones of just like everyone here should smooch. And they all pray, and there's this weird ongoing thing throughout the movie of the mom character talking to not Nathan Fillion about how she was just like, you know, Blake reminds me a lot of you when you
my
were that
God,
age.
that whole
You didn't
thing.
know
Super
anything
weird.
about the Lord, and then I spent 20 years converting you, and then like not Nathan Fillion looks her in the eyes and with like just like no light behind his eyes says, and I loved every minute of it, wife. And then they kiss. And so now you see the same thing happening to Blake, and it's supposed to be like uplifting, you know, we're bringing this guy to Jesus, which is what
We're
the movie...
bringing this young black man in America who has never heard about Jesus
Yeah,
Christ
what?
somehow.
Never once.
Somehow.
Bringing him over to the Lord, and the mom like leans in, and he's like, I think he starts out with "Yo, God," which, I mean, fuck. But the mom says, "See, just like you," and I'm like, there is no chance in
Wow,
hell
I didn't
that
even
not
follow that
Nathan
thread.
Fillion would have ever said "Yo, God."
Yeah, no,
He
absolutely
did.
not.
He did. I mean,
He says,
I'm
"Yo,
sa-
God," but then the most alarming is he says, "Thank God for Alicia being
Being
so
hot,
hot."
yeah.
oh no! Oh, I didn't even hear
And
that
then he
one.
I just don't remember the
then
timing
he follows
of
that
like
up.
then does the mom
Yeah,
say?
and he follows
Then
that
he
up
like
by being
apologizes
Reminds me
to
of
the
you.
dad.
thanks for her dad being so cool about what I just said, or something like that. It's just fucking.
And then we dart off into the sky, and the movie
Can
just
we get an
kind
aerial shot? Yeah.
and the movie just kind of ends. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
over. We fixed it.
We saved the world from spiders.
And again, right after doing this, I just went and watched Midnight Mass, and I was like, which actually reminds me a lot of another Frank Peretti story called The Visitation, which is all about a false prophet who finds himself in Spokane and heals people. And it's actually a lot of the same outline as Midnight Mass. It's just that whenever people get healed, like there's a blind guy who can see again, he starts looking at pornography
Hell
because
yeah.
his eyes are cursed by the devil. So it loses a little
See,
bit
I'm
of
like,
the
this is a
delicate touch that
comedy.
Midnight Mass has by the end.
I can't
it is
stop
funny.
looking at porn.
It is funny to see because like horror movies, I think on the whole have to portray complex morality. I mean, there's usually some sort of like base flat thing that is kind of being referenced by the ghost, by the demon, by the whatever. But characters who deal with it are all kind of compromised. And so with Peretti, he's having to like thread the needle on writing that kind of horror story, the Stephen King style horror story, with evangelical fiction where everything is black and white and it's just good guys versus the other. And so it's really
that's a good
surprising
point.
to see in this book, right? You see the goths being like sympathetic characters who just happen to worship a demon and they have to fix that, but the Lord will save them.
I guess it's why one of the big reasons you don't see a lot of evangelical horror I guess outside of Peretti. He kind of figured out how to, I don't know, crack the code feels strong because that sounds like it was a positive thing. But he vaguely figured out a formula that could appeal to that audience. I think maybe perhaps the only good use of this movie is if it's like baby's first horror movie, you know, you watch it and it introduces you to, okay.
Yeah, I agree. The answer to that is no.
I'm trying to find something good to say about this movie.
No, I don't think we need to find.
I mean, baby's
good...
first horror movie for our generation was Little Nemo's Adventures in Slumberland.
Yeah,
I think
it's a movie that I thought I dreamt for many years.
But when you watch it when you're 3, which is like the age that it's for, you will get nightmares for the next 10 years.
Brave Little Toaster is another movie in that category.
Oh yeah.
But
the clown leaning close to the camera and saying, "Run."
I think that I'm less interested in trying to find something that is like redeeming about this movie because I don't think there really is anything. I think it fucking sucks and I hated it. What I'm more interested in talking about, honestly, is like with this having missed the mark so desperately for so many reasons, many of which we've now talked about, could there be a good version of this movie? And if so, what would it look like? I feel like we've alluded to this a little bit, but I'm particularly curious to hear, you know, from your perspective, Felicia and Lauren, like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's just cut the spiders. Honestly.
Yeah, make it a ghost. Yeah.
Yeah, make it a demon ghost, I think is much more interesting than I just felt like it was so much plot and confusing parts.
Absolutely.
That it was like I couldn't even get scared because I was just trying to figure out what was going on.
I'll also say there's kind of 3 movies happening here, right? Because it's like the idea of paranormal investigating family, brilliant. Love it. Kind of reminded me of So Weird. If you ever saw that show on Disney.
I love So Weird. Yeah.
See, that's a great show.
I'm gonna give myself
But we have that going on.
flashbacks.
That's very cool. Then we have like this revenge tale of this like kid that was bullied and hung himself. And like, I love a revenge movie. Like that's really great. And then you have the potential for, you know, like what's that movie called? Arachnophobia kind of spider, you know, spider monster movie. And it's kind of just, I think there could have been 3 simple, fun PG-13 kid movies in here, and instead we just got like a mashup of nonsense.
Right. It was really hard to follow for a lot of it. Like because it was all intercut too, right? It wasn't like we'd follow one of those movies for 45 minutes and then that movie would stop and we'd start another one. It was like every 3 minutes we were jumping to a different subplot.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was this weird thing where about like I wrote in my notes at about 52 minutes in, it felt like we were about to move into the last act of the movie.
I thought the same thing.
It
That's
really
exactly
felt
how I
like
felt.
everything was rolling now, and there's about 10 or 15 minutes
I was
left.
like, we're almost done here.
But there
No,
was
you're
another
not.
45 minutes.
And again, that is because that quite literally is what happened. Like the adaptation.
That makes a lot of sense because they were just following the book faithfully.
Quite faithfully.
And then they broke off.
Exactly. And then it just went off into absolute crazy town. Let's say we throw out the spiders. Get rid of them. The spiders aren't working.
Spiders.
Goodbye, spiders.
Gone.
Again, it works better in the book.
Spiders, you'll never work in this town again. Hey, you're out of here.
If we frame it up as a ghost story, then like what makes for a good, scary, convincing ghost story that we can really dig our teeth into?
I have a thought that I'm thinking. I mean, why do I have so many thoughts about making this movie better? I don't know. But I do think it could be interesting to have a movie where, you know, a kid kills himself 10 years ago and now he's haunting these bullies. And I'm interested in like emotional horror. And I'm just like, what if they were trying, the ghost was convincing these bullies to kill themselves?
Yeah.
And then like that's how he's picking them off.
I would
That would be scary.
Yeah, I would also love, because one of the big missed opportunities I think of this movie is they didn't incorporate the game of Hangman. And so for every bully that he kills, the first letter of their name fills out another thing. And so it eventually, once he finishes that puzzle, then he can move on to the next life, but he has to kill people with the corresponding letters. And when he makes people kill themselves, and that letter doesn't work, it appears as like a crossed out one in the upper right hand corner, and he's like, oh, foiled again. And so there's like even a bigger, higher power that they can like team up to fight at the end or something. I don't know.
That's an even better movie.
That's
It's
so
like we
cool.
have it ready. And I think
I
the
feel
devil
like we should
or a
wait this
devil-
movie, friends.
Yeah.
I think this is the movie.
I think we should. And I also think the demon worship stuff in the basement is really a good start.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of scarier stuff could have happened with that, like kind of this like culty.
Yeah, not just Halloween masks.
I mean, in the book,
Yeah.
the book they have skinned and stretched a cat carcass across an altar, which is metal
That's
as hell.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
Good job, Frank.
But
so
there-
Felicia, when we were talking about this movie just in the email, you looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score on this, and it
Oh,
was
yeah.
0% on the tomato meter.
Oh yeah.
And like 74% audience score.
Wild.
Oh yeah. And that,
Which is,
I mean,
which
that's
is what we love. We love to see
most
it.
horror movies have a lower critic rating than they do an audience rating. That's very normal.
Yeah.
But a 0% and a 77% to me is not normal, and it made me very excited actually to watch this movie, because I was like, it's either going to be so bonkers that people just love it, and now I'm just like, maybe it was just the Christians.
No, it's
That's what I was
just
gonna say,
it's
is
just
it just
their
all
mission for the
Christian?
Lord. But you found a couple of Christian reviews that spoke favorably of this movie. Can we look at those for a second?
How did those reviews speak to your heart? That's what we want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
One
I'm
review was
on
just
this-
spiders. Spiders.
So one of the better ratings I found was a 3 out of 5. And this
wow.
is,
Okay. High praise.
this is by Ben Korish at ChristianAnswers.net.
Okay.
Related to David Koresh of the Branch Davidians.
It's great stuff. So they do let us know in this: foul language, sexual undertones, common taking of God's name in vain, and overt violence are replaced in this film with solid storytelling.
Thank the Lord for
You
that.
can't have solid storytelling with any of those elements, you know.
It says the primary message of this film is clear. As one character, I said the primary message is clear, but as one character puts it, fooling around with spirits is a dangerous thing. The impressionable students
That's the message?
The impressionable students become so fixated on the curse of the hangman that it consumes their thoughts, and they are fooled by its artificial power, which I will say Brian did point out the idea of a false prophet, false god,
Yeah.
which is not something I had considered at all while watching this movie, but apparently
Oh.
it was the clear message.
It's just something that's popped up in his other books. So, that's the only reason. But, like, that's not in this movie.
I guess
it
Norman
kind of
is kind
but
of a false
barely.
prophet, but nobody knows that he's doing it. Like he's
Right.
he's very much behind the scenes. So
but also with likable characters and a
Oh,
cast. A cast that delivers honest performances.
No.
Hangman's Curse is engaging and
Couple of them.
suspenseful enough to hold any audience.
captive. Yes, hold them captive.
I'm still confused though by that review, but aren't we on the Goths team?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
If we're saying
the
that
Goths are
we shouldn't
bad for
be?
being Goths and
We
for
just
being
like them
into
'cause they're
the
Goths.
demon shit. But they are
They have
also
all
being
those like
bullied.
scenes that are
Well, and that's that thing, right? The trying to convey the complex morality, trying to have these people who are not all good, but in this framework where that doesn't really work in your story at all, because everyone is going in and listening to DC Talk playing in
Right.
the background, and they're like, oh, I need a good guy, I need a bad guy, and the goth still ends up. They can be good, but they can't be a goth.
Right. Well,
anymore.
that's the thing that I was going to
They
say.
have to love the Lord, and they have to start wearing horizontal
Right.
stripes, and they have to dye their hair a mousy brown.
Well, what I was going to say to that point, Brian, is I mean, at this point too, if you think about goths and the cultural imagination, it is still at this point, I would say, still very much linked to Columbine and that whole thing, right? Goths are not just weird outcasts; they are also potentially dangerous as long as they stay on this dark
Yes.
path, right?
Yes.
Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were only dangerous because the devil led them down a bad path because they were playing
Right.
Doom and stuff like that. And
They were
that's the
playing Doom and listening to Manson.
Right.
And they were getting bullied. And what you see
Right.
from like IMDb reviews from this time, I'm sure there were some message boards that don't exist anymore that probably had people going, ooh, the whole message that people were really taking away from this, not whatever this reviewer has come up with, which is thinking the movie's about evil spirits or whatever, but it's about spiders.
The movie's about spiders.
Is people talking about it's about a very serious issue for our times, which is bullying, because any bullied kid is a potential mass shooter.
Right.
Which, of course, now that we actually know more of the details about Columbine, it had nothing to do with them.
Yeah,
being
but I
bullied,
do remember that,
you know?
and that
That's
is
what we
still
all
in
talked about,
our
yeah.
culture today. Everyone's like, talk to the quiet kid.
Yeah.
Right.
They could be on that path. Like that
Which,
definitely is still
If
in
you were
our.
a dork ass loser in high school, which at least one of us recording and talking right now was.
You can guess. You can guess.
Frank Peretti.
Turn that shit twofold. Like, it was always like, if someone's going to fuck with you, they were like, you know, fucking with you because you're a faggot or whatever, Brian.
Right.
And then the next part is, and now you're going to shoot up the school. It didn't help.
Right.
It didn't help this whole idea that every nerd is going to shoot everybody.
Well, and two, the point of like how the conversation has continued about this through to the present day. Whenever you hear about the question of like violence in schools, which, by the way, again, I'm sorry that I keep talking about the book, but one of the big framing things in the book is that the school has just gotten metal detectors. And the whole reason that Spider...
That's pretty fucking important.
It's extremely important because that's the whole reason that the whole Spider thing
metal
ends up happening. Exactly. That's way too expensive.
Well, and they were filming in Canada, so didn't have to worry about that.
That's part of the reason that it was biological warfare rather than just getting a gun, was that they wouldn't be able to get a gun in because they had these metal detectors. And also the installation of these metal detectors were providing parents with a false sense of security about the school, which was also why they were so reticent to close the school, because they're like, it couldn't be that big of a deal. The school's safe. We got cops and metal detectors. So
see, and that's what makes Peretti's book so interesting, is he's so fucking neurotic.
You can't tell in his performance in this movie.
Right. He holds in him every neurosis that evangelical Christianity has.
Yeah.
They all exist in this one man, and he puts them all on the paper and articulates them so perfectly. And then the movie is trying to be more accessible to non-Christians, which Peretti really isn't trying to do.
No.
Because Peretti is like the guy who, one of his first horror stories was an audio drama he wrote for Focus on the Family about a woman being haunted by her aborted daughter.
Well, Brian, you know, it's to your point about like the way that he writes. Yeah, I mean, it is not unlike how in Moby Dick, Herman Melville will just like stop the narration to be extremely autistic about whales for 20 to 30 pages. It's very much the same way in Frank Peretti's writing, where he will stop the narrative cold to talk about the importance of biblical values and how the atheists are
and why DNA isn't really a symbol of how we actually evolved from a common ancestor.
For pages
to
and
apes.
pages and pages. In that weird scene earlier in the movie where there is actually a scene in the book where Leisha debates one of the teachers about evolution. Like,
fuck yes.
Yeah. Like, what you are seeing in this movie is just scratching the surface of what Peretti does as a writer.
If I made this into a movie personally, I would keep the Christian shit.
Yeah, you gotta.
I would make it
Don't cut a
even
word.
more explicitly about prayer in school.
Yes.
Like, the problem with the Goths is that they're praying the wrong way, but public schools allow Wiccan prayer, and they don't allow Christian prayer because America hates Christians, which is what they really fucking believe.
That's
Even
wild.
though they make the evangelicals don't make up a majority of Americans, but Christians in 2004 absolutely do.
That's wild.
And so I would just do that. I would also keep the scene with the dude hanging himself in front of the school while they cheer him on, but I would make it more unambiguous. I would make it very operatic, center frame. He's about to jump and everyone's like, yeah.
Somebody give this man $2 million.
That would require you to have a DP.
Give me a school in Vancouver.
That would require you to have a DP that wouldn't jizz himself by doing a shot of an overhead door of a boy opening a door and then closing it. You watch that shot in the movie and the opening title credits, and you're like, you know, afterward they were like, we fucking nailed that. That's some avant-garde shit. It was on the ceiling.
No. When the mom is using the light to see if she's awake and it's going across the camera like 20 times, I was like, wow, they really thought this was really smart.
Absolutely awesome. Eat your heart out, Vince Gilligan.
Yeah. Inside a washing machine, I'll put you inside a doorknob.
I gotta call up Mike Flanagan and just be like, hey, so what you're doing with Catholicism, I want to do with evangelicalism, but unironically and from no distance from the outside at all. I'm just gonna play this as though I am Frank Peretti.
Brian, I got good news for you. Frank Peretti is more than willing to star in this vehicle as long as he can play every single character.
Is he alive? Is he still alive?
He is still alive. He hasn't written for like at least 10 years.
He's building up to his magnum opus, I think.
I know. I want to see if he's got an Instagram.
It's just called Spiders.
He doesn't. He snuffed out all of his social media 5 or 6 years ago.
Well,
he just decided there was no place
he's only
for him
70.
anymore.
He could make
There we
many
go.
more things.
So I would be interested in finding out whatever it is that's giving Frank Peretti writer's block, because it certainly isn't happening to Ted Decker. That motherfucker keeps shitting them out.
So
He's nowhere near as good.
There was a review of this film that you mentioned before we started rolling that both Brian and Josh reacted very strongly to. What review is this? Because I have been very
Are you
curious.
talking about Plugged In?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I
less
think
to
so.
do. To be clear, it was less to do with the review itself, and more to do with what Plugged In is. Plugged In is the media review outlet of focus on the family, which also, of course, produces Adventures in Odyssey. So that was why we had that big aha moment.
Before IMDb had a parental advisory page, Plugged In mostly just reviewed things for seeing how many S words
Yeah,
or
they didn't
D
really, and
words they
at this
had.
point too, still they weren't reviewing films for artistic merit. In fact, this movie, the review for Plugged In goes pretty far out of its way to not levy an artistic critique, and mostly just bitches about how it wasn't explicit enough about its Christian themes.
Yeah.
Plugged Up was the name of the website that the man with the cursed eyes was forced to look at forever after his sight was restored.
Plugged Up is actually
No,
the
don't do this.
the opposite of Goatsy. There were two websites.
Felicia,
Can I
please
read
read
you
this
some of
review
it?
for the love of God.
Okay.
Power
I'm
and
not going to read
opposite
the review,
polarity.
but I'm going to read a couple of the sections. So they have a
Yeah.
section that's like review, positive elements, spiritual content. I will read now sexual content.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Here we
Yes.
A Ford classmate steals a kiss from Alicia, but while she seems to like him, she reprimands him for taking liberties. That same classmate thanks God that Alicia is, in quotes, so hot. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, and he really does steal that kiss too. Like her dad calls
is
her. She says,
inappropriate.
"Be right there,
Yeah.
Dad." And while she's distracted, he's like, "Now's the time," and he like lunges in. It's very weird. Like it's very
inappropriate.
It's
It's
very
a little
inappropriate. It's very gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crude
she was in
or
the right.
profane language. Elijah blurts, "What the?" and then stops himself before finishing the thought. That's all it says. I just want to read this very last section.
Yeah.
Because it says, so Plugged In actually asked Mr. Peretti himself, why doesn't Hangman's Curse make a big deal out of spiritual warfare?
Right,
that's
He
his whole thing.
responded, I'm not really writing about spiritual conflict in the same way I was years ago. Hangman's Curse, published in 2001, never was a book about spiritual warfare. It's a book about bullying. So that's where you got that from earlier. In Peretti's mind, Hangman's Curse isn't about creating an evangelical tool. It's about getting a thriller out there that's not chock full of blood, lust, and foul language. And it's confronting viewers with the pain that bullying causes. Anyone looking for anything more will be sorely disappointed.
I just want to ask a clarifying note. He didn't say that's not chock full of bloodlust. He said chock full of blood, comma,
Blood,
lust.
comma, lust.
I
see,
fucking
see.
hate it when there's lust in my books.
So, I feel like we've really kind of come to the end of our discussion of Hangman's Curse, the motion picture. It sounds like, Brian and I have a lot of history and background with this stuff, with Christian pop culture, with Frank Peretti specifically.
Well, I personally was just working my way through every Italian-American author and got to the P's.
Understandably so.
There we go. Yeah.
He was trapped on the 13th floor of Wayside School.
But for the rest of you who are in here right now, I'm assuming that most of this was new or new-ish to you. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what did you come away from
I like
this with?
lots of lust in my books.
Okay. So mostly you were just disappointed about the lack of lust. It was the big takeaway.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like confronting something like this, seeing something like this, does it just come across as like a weird, mediocre movie? Do you see the?
Yeah, or does it feel like a dispatch from another world?
Yeah, exactly.
Lauren, what do you think?
I think weird, mediocre movie, to be honest. I don't know. I felt like it was like similar enough to other weird, mediocre movies. Obviously, with a different lens. And as we said, there's a lot of like weird religious commentary, of course. But I felt like I have seen similar-ish sort of things that are just like a bad movie that's like an unclear plot. Everyone got really excited and it ended up just bad.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like kind of both. Like yes to that, and also like this world of stuff for Christian teens is very different. But I will say I'm just reminded of this in this moment because I know I mentioned Christian rock earlier, but there were in my years in the 2004s, whatever, there was a lot of like screamo bands that I was very into that I didn't realize were Christian bands.
Oh, like what ones?
Whoa.
The Devil Wears Prada was a Christian band. I went to one of their shows once and they said, "Can we take a moment for prayer?" And everyone was like, "What?"
Well, it's nice to know that it was like all the fans didn't know. Like it wasn't just
no
you.
one knew. It was
Like,
very
it's just-
strange. If you guys know Flyleaf, which is like she's a female screamo vocalist from back in the day, I had no idea for years that was a Christian band. Like there's like actually a lot of those. And it's funny how like at each part of like whatever's in the popular culture of the time, there is kind of this like not secret maybe, but feels kind of secret Christian subgroup of it that's doing it in their own special way. That's like maybe seeping into the rest of the pop culture and also maybe not.
Sure.
They're just trying to lure you in
Yeah.
by thinking it's not Christian.
That's what they're doing with Broadway right now. There's a whole mafia.
Josh, we can't let it stop though, because I need a revival of Into the Light. I need the musical about how the Shroud of Turin is real actually, and also there's an alien mime. I need this musical back.
I
What
can't-
the fuck are you talking about?
What was that musical
the
about?
80s were so bad.
I can't wait for Laura Osnes to produce that in conjunction with Betsy DeVos.
What were you saying, Felicia?
I was
Starring
gonna
Chad
ask
Kimball.
Lauren what that musical was. It's like the woman that got really famous for being a preacher.
Yeah, that was scandalous. That was produced by the DeVos family.
Okay.
Wait, no fucking way.
Yeah,
I did
really?
not
That was
know
DeVos
that.
money. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, now we know.
Thanks, Amway.
What I'll say about this movie is that I feel like the Odyssey to me feels much more like Dispatches from Another World. This felt like it was so recognizable in so many ways to me.
Because
Like
it was trying to imitate other movies so much.
Yeah, and it did end up more in the mediocre bad movie. It was really only with the prayer stuff in school and the walking through the valley of the shadow of death at the end of the movie that
And
she was
they're
quoting and then all
mostly
praying
such
over
short
her.
parts of the film, and the film is so long.
Yeah, and it's
You can
again,
you can kind of
it is
block it out of your
so-
head as the rest of the other stuff is
I'm
happening.
like, how is
Yeah.
this not a 70-minute movie?
Bizarre.
TV movie?
Bizarre.
Yeah, it should have been. I think it would have been a lot stronger if it were a 70-minute TV movie. But yeah, no, I will say that I feel like I enjoyed parts of this movie more than I've enjoyed a lot of other Christian entertainment, but that's because it was the parts that had made no pretenses about being Christian. It was
It's
just
probably because we're desensitizing you, AJ.
yeah, actually the arc of this podcast is me slowly turning into a husk. So that should be our
Eventually, you'll
tagline.
have no interest for any kind of entertainment.
None.
Yeah.
None whatsoever, except my good old Bible.
Yeah.
Felicia, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Is there anything y'all would like to plug? I mean, obviously the Sinister Sisters podcast, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts, I think. But are there any
That's true,
shows or
yeah.
anything, any big specials you have planned coming up that you want to tell our viewers about?
I'm sure Felicia has more.
I'll say the episode we did this week. We usually do more spooky stuff. I did something a little strange. I talked about photographic memory because I was very interested in it.
It's a really
And,
lovely episode. I listened to that
thanks.
today.
And then the
Yeah,
animals,
the Dutch
animal
man.
bones in the walls.
Animals in the walls.
Ooh, yeah. So we just kind of cover stories of the strange and unusual. It's really fun. It kind of is what our.
It's also much more accessible. We used to be much more like horror movie focused, and now we're kind of doing like strange and unusual stories, as she said. So
Yeah.
it's much more accessible if you are scared of jump scares like AJ.
yeah.
I very much appreciate not having
It
to
is
have
less
panic attacks.
accessible if you are scared of the Dutch, like me.
And
They're
as
going
always,
to come
I have
after us.
We sure
And as
are.
always, I have to plug my YouTube channel, Girly Gore.
Yes, which is
That's all horror. But thank you for having us. This was very
Yeah.
fun.
Yes.
This was so fun.
It was so fun.
Cannot apologize
Very
enough
happy
to
to
make
have
you
you
watch this
on.
movie.
Yeah, this is just what we do. Is like I come up with something terrible that's going to make people hate me,
Right.
and then we force them to watch it.
There we
It's a
go.
great concept for a podcast.
Yeah, and little did you know that we would both find the Lord today. So
Yeah.
Oh,
So congratulations, welcome to
And
the
we're
kingdom.
officially converted.
great job.
2 more for
Well
the
done,
flock, baby.
well done, good and faithful servant. Now you may find your rest.
Oh,
It
God.
seems like Peretti really did give us a miracle elixir after all.
Aw.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
And I am the worst of all possible Brians.
Go forth and multiply like the spider hybrids that are living in your walls.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
So, fun fact, you can watch this movie on YouTube. Old school, uploaded 2008, little 10-minute chunks with hard-coded Swedish subtitles. It's exactly the way the Lord wanted you to watch this Frank Peretti TV movie for teens. Anyway, we'd like to thank our sponsors, which are, of course, not the Floridian Gun Depot that is now dealing with the monolithic spider hive mind, but rather our very own spider hive mind. The patrons at Patreon who keep us going. They include Aeneas Hemphill, Ari Rodriguez, Ben Ferber, Benjamin R. Alford, Bill Corby, Dave Skolar, Davis Van de Steeg, Dominic Russo, JV, Nate Netzley, Nell Johnson, Octavia Immersive, Olivia Hernandez, Tony Diddy, Trevor Strunk, with a special thank you to Ashley Stoneman, Hannah White, Nikola Donov, Sam Borman, and Timmy Sexton. All right, folks. Join us next time